Welcome back to this channel. This is Trendy Storm and you are watching what if Naruto's Retrieval team left the village after the mission. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting no more time. Let's start the story.
B.San, take Naruto and retreat. I'll go save Kakashi, Guy shouted before placing Naruto on one of B's tentacles. Careful, fool, B said while he retreated. Their retreat was cut short quickly by gigantic spires that shot from underground in front of them and curved inwards as they rose into the sky. A barrier glimmered between the spires as the cage had finished forming. Damn! B exclaimed as he punched the barrier while still in his Biju transformation, the barrier not breaking or bending even after he launched a Bijudama, tailed beast bomb, at it. Guy had arrived at Kakashi's side and quickly tried to check what the damage was. He was sad to find that it was a vital injury and that Kakashi was already dying. He began to panic when he didn't saw Uzu again before his body froze up and he fell forward as an ethereal copy of his body was dragged out by an invisible hand. Uzu appeared with his hand in the air where he had previously used the human path to remove Guy's soul. He noted the two Jinchurikis still trying to break through the barrier as he cancelled his illusion and the world around them warped. Outside the illusion, Tobi watched curiously as the other shinobi had stood still, which made him suspect the use of a genjutsu. As he saw Kakashi start to bleed from the chest while Guy fell to the ground like a ragged doll, he started to doubt if it was a genjutsu. Uzu was standing above Naruto with his hand on his stomach, which he believed was to stop the Kyuubi from interfering. Strangely enough, the Hachibi had not begun to rampage, so it seemed that it was also under the influence of the genjutsu. Looking back at Naruto and Uzu, he found the latter to be missing and was surprised to see him standing right beside himself. They won't be waking up for some time. I took the liberty of taking care of Kakashi and Guy, so I advise you to do something about the other two. This was a fun trip even though the losses were a bit high. Tobi glanced at the two Jinchuriki before turning back to ask why he had appeared but found him no longer there. Where Uzu once stood were rainbow-colored wisps that radiated warmth. Guess that's goodbye then, he murmured. Reality is cruel and not all secrets can be revealed. Tobi commented before removing his mask and standing in front of the revived Jubi. His Mangekyo Sharingan spun as the Jubi roared, the sky turning a deep shade of red as a pillar of chakra was unleashed. Konoha Shinobi Academy, Room 301. The three Konoha rookie teams had just gathered in front of the entrance before their gathering was interrupted by a white-haired young man. Hey you guys, you should be more quiet. You guys are rookies just out of the academy, right? Screaming like schoolgirls. Geez. Who do you think you are? Ino asked annoyed. I'm Kabuto, but instead of that, look behind you. Kabuto motioned to their backs where the other contestants were. When the rookies turned and looked back, they were met with annoyed looks from a team from AIM. Those guys behind you are from a megacure. They have short tempers. Everyone is nervous about the exam. Quiet down before you cause a scene. Kabuto said to the now somewhat nervous rookies. Well, I can't blame you. You're clueless rookies. You remind me of how I used to be, he said as he dug around his small holster bag. Kabuto.san, right? Is this your second exam? Sakura asked. No, this is my 7th time. The exam is held twice a year, so this is my 4th year. Kabuto answered while smiling. So you know a lot about this exam? Sakura concluded, which was confirmed by Kabuto nodding at her. Hee, then I'll share some info with you cute rookies. With these nin.info cards. On the other side of the room, the Uzu team were seated while playing shogi. They had received shocked and then hostile looks before they lessened as the team ignored all other contestants and started playing their game. Any news from Naruto? Sama, Shin, the smallest of the group who had his hair in a bun, asked. I don't have any means to contact him. Better ask Ikano since he has that seal. The one named Shin answered while moving a piece. The last teammate scoffed at Shin's move before he took out the piece with his own. He's just arrived at the viewing room. He'll be watching us soon. And respect your elders unless you want to become dust. Ikano, the bulkiest of the three of them, said. Ah, but we're teammates now, so I find it unnecessary to call you otherwise, Shin said while smiling and moving another piece. Ikano glared at the boy before sighing. Youngsters these days, no manners at all. He took another piece while ignoring the shocked look on Shin's face at the loss of yet another piece. Ikano turned to the other boy watching the shogi match. Why are you asking for news about the master, Haku? Our orders were clear. Get to the last phase and show off our power. Ikano asked while swatting at Shin's hand as it reached for one of his game pieces. Just because he wasn't looking didn't mean he wasn't paying attention to the board. I was just asking in case of a change in plans. Haku answered before turning back to looking at their match. Ikano just shrugged and turned back to the game. I'll let you know if anything comes up. Kabuto had just finished showing the nin.info cards of Gaara and Lee to the rookies before safely placing them back in his holster bag. Konoha, Suna, Aim, Kusa, Taki, Otto, many outstanding genins from the various hidden villages are here to take the exam. Well, Otobakure is a small village just created last year, so there isn't much info, but the rest of the hidden villages are filled with talented youngsters. I even heard that the newly revived Uzubakure sent a team also. Uzubakure was once believed to either be the replacement for one of the 5 main hidden villages or become the 6th main hidden village. Konoha, Shinobi Academy. Sensei Viewing Room Kurama had been watching the rookies and was slightly impressed at how Kabuto's performance was going. The adult infant was placing his attention on the whole screen while keeping his focus on only certain camera's feeds. He flinched and resisted the urge to facepalm when Kunato declared his name and that he would not lose to the bastards, which he called the other contestants. This was another reason why he was glad to have been sealed on the other Uzumaki twin. He watched with a slight frown as the Auto team attacked Kabuto and when Kabuto vomited from the after effects of Dosu's sound attack. The things he found annoying were the cow print uniforms. He wanted to know who the idiot to come up with that idea was so he could choke him, her with said articles of clothing. The other which caused him to frown was the mistake Kabuto made in his act with his quick recovery. He will tell Orochimaru to give him more training to the young medic on proper acting. He started to focus on all the screens when a cloud of smoke notified the arrival on what he believed to be the proctor. Konoha, Hokage Residence, Daimyo Viewing Hall. Quiet down, you worthless bastards. A voice sounded from the speakers as the cloud of smoke slowly faded away. The middle camera view showed the proctor, Ibiki Morino, with a group of Chunin behind him. Thanks for waiting, I am Ibiki Morino, the examiner for the Chunin selection exam's first test. Naruto yawned, then took a bite of his dango before sighing. Ryujin turned at Naruto with a small smile. Anything wrong, Uzumaki? Dono? Naruto smiled towards the aged lord before answering. I was hoping for something more entertaining, but because of the choice in the examiner I'm guessing we'll be looking at psychological manipulation. Oh, how have you come to this conclusion, if I may ask? Ryujin asked with curiosity. Ibiki Morino is famously known, as well as his field of expertise, which is torture, more specifically the methods dealing with the mind. Naruto said with a hint of boredom. Of course. I think the brochure said we were to see who had the courage to complete their missions and what means they had to gather information, if they have the means at all. Ryujin said with a chuckle as he showed the brochure to the boy. Naruto looked with his wide eye at the brochure before they narrowed in discontent and annoyance. I wasn't given a brochure, he commented dryly before taking a sip of his tea while glowering at the screen in front. The daimyos heard some scuffling and thumping outside before one of Naruto's guard, Hino, returned and handed him what seemed to be an exact copy of the paper Ryujin was holding in his hand. Ryujin frowned slightly and took note to remember to find out why the boy was not given a brochure. As Konoha was his property, it will reflect bad on him if they did not show proper hospitality and procedure. He raised his brochure up while motioning with his closed fan at the door. His guards knew what to do. Naruto noted when the guard left and turned his attention back to the screen. He frowned slightly as he had missed the seat assignments and the declaration of the rules. He looked at the brochure and quickly found the information. Huh, so it's a written test to promote cheating while testing courage at the end with a trick question, he thought. He looked around the screen and found the Uchiha boy using his Sharingan to copy the movements of another, two Hyugas using their Byakugan to see around them, the puppy barking for no reason, so it must be an Inuzuka. He thought he saw a bug flying around, so an Aburame must be present, though the creepiest might have been that floating sandy eye. He found his team and was amused to see Ikono sulking as he had finished writing. He noticed from some other camera views that Haku had created some ice mirrors and was using them to collect the information via their reflection. He facepalmed when he looked at the sleeping Shin. Anything wrong, Uzumaki? Dono? Naruto groaned when Ryujin asked him that and pointed at the white-haired boy in one of the camera feeds. That one is one of mine, and I might just tell his superior to give him a month of D-rank missions, even if he doesn't fail. He replied sulkily before he finished with gleeful malice at the end. Oh, what fun, what fun. I might take your example and do that with my subordinates. Yes, that will be most amusing. Ryujin chuckled as he fanned himself. Okay. We will now start the 10th question. Naruto turned back to the main feed where Ibiki began to tell them the rules for the final question. He saw a lot of teams get up to leave and saw the signs of slight hesitation by the Hyuga girl. He was surprised when Kunato raised his hand as he thought he was going to quit. His surprise was mostly on not expecting it from the reports he had received from his personality. He was a bit relieved to know his information was accurate when Kunato shouted he was not giving up. He tuned out the explanation about the last question's motive and only glanced to see who the proctor for the second exam was going to be. He gained the sudden urge to rub his temples as he saw Anko introduce herself as the proctor. He just knew that Orochimaru was going to be ecstatic to tease his former student after messing with the Uchiha in the second test. He remembered the letter he was given from Aoba and opened it up to read it. He silently mumbled about stupid long letters that were just only pretty words to make the letter seem more important. He stood up as he had finished reading it. "Please excuse me for leaving. It seems Sarutobi-san wants to have a few words with me." He excused himself as he nodded at the daimyo present. Some nodded back while others remained indifferent or frowned in displeasure. He noted each of their expressions and made his way outside, his two guards closely following. Hokage Tower. Hokage's office. Sarutobi fiddled with his pipe as he received a glare from Kaharu and a small frown from Homura. He knew they were mad at him for not informing them of Naruto's arrival nor of his new status. A knock on the door made him sigh. "You may come in," he called out. The doors to the office opened and then Naruto walked followed by his two guards, Keize and Hino. Hiruzen frowned slightly at the boy's appearance and wondered what happened to his eye. He caught the glimmer near the boy's hand and found a ring with what looked to be an indigo stone surrounded by wings on his right hand. There was another ring with small intricate carvings but made it a bit less impressive than the one with the gem. "Please have a seat, Naruto," Sarutobi asked kindly. In response he received a raised eyebrow from Naruto's visible eye. "I'm sorry, Uzumaki." "Dono," he mended with a frown as Naruto did take his seat after. "What is it you wanted to talk with me, Saru?" Naruto asked with boredom while looking at Sarutobi, which caused Kaharu and Homura to frown as well as make the 5 hidden Anbu bristle. "You will address the Hokage with proper respect," Kaharu said in anger while Homura just shook his head at his teammate's exclamation. Naruto turned to Kaharu with barely hidden amusement. "Pray tell, what will you do if I don't?" Kaharu turned red from anger and was about to verbally assault the brat when Homura placed a hand on her shoulder to keep her in place. "Enough. Kaharu, compose yourself and Uzumaki, stop antagonizing my advisors," Hiruzen exclaimed in annoyance. "I called you here, Uzumaki. Dono, to inquire as to your motives regarding Konoha as well as to ask for the removal of your spies within Konoha," Hiruzen asked. "Every village has their spies, Hokage. Sama. It's your own problem to root them out," he explained while giving a mocking smile at Kaharu. "As for my motives regarding Konoha, well, I'll just say," Naruto started while Hiruzen and the advisors paid close attention as Naruto trailed off a bit. "It's a secret," Naruto chuckled at the annoyed looks from the 3 elder shinobi. "I understand, Uzumaki. Dono," Sarutobi sighed. "That is all I wanted to ask, you may leave." Naruto remained in his seat, however. "That's rather rude, Saru. I had a reason to come meet you as well." "Oh, what will that be?" Hiruzen asked with curiosity, while his teammates shifted in annoyance at having to remain much longer in the office. "I want my inheritance, Sarutobi," Naruto said, causing the eyes of those present within the room to widen in shock. Hiruzen composed himself quickly and answered back. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but your parents didn't leave anything behind. While Minato and Kushina left 2 scrolls for each of you, I can't let you claim yours as I still don't know what your view on Konoha is," Naruto, Hiruzen thought in sadness. His lie was torn apart by the boy's next words. "I know Minato and Kushina left something, Sarutobi. You can't lie to me," Naruto said whilst glaring at the Hokage, his words causing the hidden Anbu to gasp at the surprising news and the elders to tense. "You cannot have them, Naruto. That is my final say on the matter," Hiruzen said sternly. Naruto frowned and abruptly stood up. This was all the Anbu needed to jump into action as they surrounded the Hokage and the advisors, swords at their throats. "What is the meaning of this?" Sarutobi shouted at the Anbu while the advisors remained still but glared at the Anbu that were detaining them. Naruto chuckled as he sat back down while placing his feet upon the Hokage's desk. The guard behind Naruto, Hino, shifted a bit before silently handing Naruto 2 sets of scrolls. Sarutobi recognized the scrolls immediately and used Kawarimi with the Anbu holding the sword to his throat. He evaded the other 2 Anbu and almost reached the scrolls before his path was blocked by Hino, which left enough time for the 3 free Anbu to restrain him. "You can't have them, Naruto. Unless yo." Hiruzen interrupted himself with a gasp as he watched the scrolls go up in flames from a minor Kaden jutsu. "What? Why did you do that? They were your parents' letters. You even burned Kunato's," he shouted as he turned to Naruto, whose face was impassive. In response, the world around them shifted slightly as the mist illusion was released. the Anbu surrounding the Hokage taking a step back in alarm. Hokage. Sama. Please forgive us, we thought you were the boy. They exclaimed while bowing and remaining in that position as Naruto, now revealed to be in the Hokage's chair, chuckled at them. Naruto stood up and walked towards Sarutobi but was unable to get near as the 5 Anbu blocked his path while pointing their swords. HMPH, guess I'll be leaving then. He said dismissively before making his way to the door, his guards following closely. Oh. I almost forgot, a certain snake told me that he had a surprise for you. He said you'll receive it at the finals of the Chunin exams. He said as the Hokage looked in shock at his retreating figure as the door closed. Hiruzen sat down in his desk as he dismissed the Anbu as well as Kaharu and Homura who scurried off to their duties. He didn't know nor wanted to know how Naruto knew Orochimaru, but he will think positive on the boy as he warned him about what may be an incoming threat. Forest of Death, second test. Hours later Team Uzu strolled down the forest heading straight to the tower at the center of it. They had encountered giant leeches, giant spiders and a cross dressing Orochimaru. The leeches were taken out by Haku freezing them to death while the spiders were slashed to pieces by Shin. The last one was the most difficult as Ikono tried to atomize the Sannin as soon as he saw him sneaking around their camp. However, keeping to his title as the Snake Sannin quickly slithered away without harm, cackling as he dodged Ikono's Jinten, dust release, cubes. Ikono had sulked from having missed all his attacks though he stopped when Shin accused him of taking it easy on Orochimaru. Shin was nursing a bump on his head courtesy from Haku as punishment from having his laughter bring the attention of the giant tigers that had been nearby. Haku released a deep sigh when an Omegakure Genin landed in front of their team. Hand over your scroll and I'll let you live, the Genin shouted threateningly while brandishing a kunai. In response, Haku got behind Ikono as the other already had a cube of energy between his hands. Jinten. Genkei Hikari no Jutsu, dust release. Atomic dismantling technique, Ikono murmured as he propelled the cube forward. The Genin freaked out and was about to jump back when he was trapped inside the now enlarged cube. Before he could utter a yell for help, the orb within the cube exploded and filled the cube with smoke. You can look now, Haku. I still wonder why you decided to become a shinobi if you don't like or wish to kill. Ikono grunted before he moved forward in direction of the tower. Hiding within some of the foliage on the tree behind the Uzu Genins, the 2 teammates of the AIM Genin trembled from fear. Now that their partner Oboro was killed, their strategy to ambush them from behind was now in tatters. Some rustling from above their hiding place drew their attention upwards and away from the Uzu team. Upon looking closely they saw the third member, the boy with gray hair, sticking to a branch above them while smiling at them. Just as they were about to jump back and run away, a crushing weight settled upon them as they felt a hand clasp onto one of their shoulders. You best hope you have your team's scroll, or you might meet the same fate as your former teammate. Ikono spoke from behind them. Forest of Death, Tower. 5th day all the remaining teams were assembled in front of the Hokage as he gave a speech on what the exams represented. Hiruzen grew annoyed at the big Uzu team member who he knew had fallen asleep while standing. A Jonin appeared in front of the Hokage on his knees before getting up and turning to the 24 Genin gathered. Haku discreetly elbowed Ikono while muttering, "Pay attention. Because the first and second test may have been too easy this year, we have a bit too many people remaining. In accordance with Chunin exam rules, we must have a preliminary and reduce the number of participants for the third exam." The Jonin, Hayate Gecko, explained to them while pausing to cough on occasion. He received several complaints but he ignored them and continued on. Those who are not feeling well or do not want to continue, please step forward now since we will be starting the preliminaries immediately, Hayate spoke. I'd like to retire, Kabuto said while rubbing the back of his head. I'm in no condition to fight, he said before turning around and leaving. As the Genin talked amongst themselves, Shin approached the proctor to tell him he was withdrawing and also left. Hayate coughed once to gain their attention but the others continued talking, including the Ju Jonins near the Hokage. Growing annoyed, Hayate coughed loudly and was able to gather their attention. Since we now have exactly 22 entrants, we will conduct 11 matches and the winners will advance to the third test. Hayate explained quickly. There are basically no rules. The fight continues until one of you dies or is knocked out or admits defeat. However, if I decide that the winner has been established, since we don't want to increase the amount of corpses, I'll jump in and stop things. At those words a panel moved back and showed an electronic board. Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Akato using the moves he copied from Lee when he fought him before the written test. Sasuke was able to beat Yoroi using only taijutsu since he could not use his chakra due to Orochimaru's Juinjutsu. Above in the walkway, Aikano was completely ignoring the fights as he played a game of shogi against Kurama while Haku watched intently the shogi match. They received annoyed looks from the several Jonin sensei and angry looks from the genin which they also ignored. As Kakashi took Sasuke away to seal the Juinjutsu, the board began to flash again through the participants' names. A certain sound Jonin slithered out and chased after the teacher and student pair. Shino Aburame vs Zaku Abumi. Being true to his nature as an Aburame, Shino did not underestimate his opponent and analyzed Zaku with his Kikachu bugs. Shino blocked the air pipes in Zaku's hands and gave him the option to give up. Thinking he was bluffing, Zaku fired his air blasts at Shino. As his air pipes were blocked, the air had no way to get out, so the pressure instantly built up and made his arms explode, leaving Shino the victor. Kankuro vs Masumi Tsurugi. Using his puppet as a decoy, Kankuro broke almost every bone on Masumi's body after Masumi tried to strangle the disguised puppet with his stretchy limbs. Sakura Haruno vs Ino Yamanaka. Using their small amount of skills, they both knocked themselves out and were both eliminated. Tamari vs Tenten. Using her skillful win techniques, Tamari was able to easily win against the badly prepared Tenten. Due to not giving up even when her only skills were neutralized, she received an injury from falling onto Tamari's giant fan which the Suna girl had closed on purpose to hurt Tenten. Tamari was declared the winner. Shikamaru Nara vs Kinsuchi. Using evasion and the weapons of his opponent to his favor, Shikamaru was able to win against Kin using his Kagemain no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique, by knocking her unconscious using the wall behind her. Kunato Uzumaki vs Kiba. Inuzuka. Being completely overwhelmed by Kiba's taijutsu along with Akamaru helping Kiba, Kunato tricked Kiba to knock Akamaru unconscious. By accidentally overwhelming Kiba's sense of smell while disorienting him with a fart, Kunato used a copy of Sasuke's Shishi Renden, Lion's Barrage. By using Kage Bushin, Shadow Clones, to make up for the lack of speed, he called his winning move Uzumaki Renden, Uzumaki Barrage. Neji Hyuga vs Hinata Hyuga. The battle went in favor of Neji from the start because of his taunting remarks and superior speed. He almost killed Hinata because of his resentment towards the main branch of the Hyuga. As Hinata did not give up and kept getting up, his rage grew and he lost his composure, almost killing the heiress, but was stopped from committing the act by the intervention from the proctor and fellow Jonins. Gaara vs Rock Lee. The fight started in a stalemate between Gaara's automatic defensive sand and Rock Lee's incredible speed and strength. It turned into Lee's favor when he took off his unnaturally heavy weights, which allowed him to successfully outspeed the sand and hit Gaara. However, not expecting a second layer of defense, his technique failed as Gaara used a substitution to escape. By opening 5 of the 8 gates, Lee was able to use the reverse lotus and badly damage Gaara's armor of sand. However, due to the drawback of opening the gates, Lee was unable to move properly or escape Gaara's attacks and was disqualified as Might Guy stopped Gaara's attack before they struck Lee and killed him. Haku Yuki vs Dosu Kinuda. Haku stood before Dosu as they waited for the proctor to start the match. From what I saw at the first exam, he uses sound waves to paralyze and disorient, so I'll have to find how he does it first before thinking of a counter. Haku thought right before the proctor jumped back and shouted to begin. This will be over in a moment, Dosu said with confidence as he ran towards Haku. Haku merely raised an eyebrow before using the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, to get behind Dosu while delivering a kick to the Auto Genin's back. Dosu recovered quickly by doing a cartwheel and then turning back to his opponent. Haku hummed behind his mask before placing his hands within his sleeves and taking out a handful of senbon. Dosu's eyes narrowed as he took in the sight of the needles and quickly sent a sound wave towards Haku. Seeing the arm movement, Haku quickly used a Shunshin to outrun the sound wave and appear above Dosu, where he threw a barrage of senbon at the unaware genin. Not expecting an aerial assault, Dosu was slow on defending with his melody arm and got punctured on multiple places in his left side, which made his left arm hang limp and useless. Dosu gritted his teeth while taking out the senbon he could reach, knowing leaving them alone will only hinder him later. He knew that from experience when he sparred against Kin. He suddenly shivered and took notice how everyone on the walkways was trying to get warm by burrowing into their clothes. Glancing back at Haku, he only saw a new barrage of senbon flying towards him from where he last saw the masked boy. He quickly raised his right arm and blocked with his Midori arm, causing the senbon to fall to the ground useless. He hopped away as another wave of needles was thrown from his left and took a breather when Haku appeared some distance in front of him. Give up. I have figured out your technique and know how to counter it. Haku tried to get Dosu to quit as he did not want to test if his theory worked or not. It might also potentially kill the Auto Genin if it worked. Unfortunately, Dosu thought otherwise. You may have found out my melody arm is the source of my techniques, but I'm positive you don't know how to counter it. Dosu thought before returning to try to hit Haku with one of his sound waves. Above in the rafters, Kakashi had a hand on an excited Kunato's shoulder to try to keep him down. He had arrived after the match with Lee and Gaara and had discreetly reported to the Sandaime of his encounter with Orochimaru when he was performing the sealing on Sasuke's Juinjutsu. "Isn't Haku awesome, Kakashi? Sensei? By the way, why is it so cold in here?" Kunato exclaimed as he watched the fight while rubbing his hands on the sleeves of his jacket to get warm. Kakashi's eyes smiled at Kunato and ruffled his head. "He sure is," he said to his student as he turned back to the fight. His eye narrowed as he too felt the coldness of the room and knew that they had not installed any air conditioning in the area. But what had him more worried is how Haku ended up being on a team of Uzushiogakure Genin when he had left Nami no Kuni with the Kagaya boy from the new company that was the talk among the civilians recently. Were Uzushio and the company the Kagaya boy worked for involved with each other, or did Haku leave the boy some time later and got drafted into the Uzushio's ranks? The thought slowly left his mind as startled and odd gasps drew him back to the fight. Having just dodged another sound wave, Haku made a special hand seal, then released his chakra and instantaneously created a dome of mirrors in front of him that surrounded Dosu. Acting quickly from thinking it was a trapping technique, Dosu ran towards one of the ice structures and used his melody arm to shatter it. Unexpectedly, his attack did not leave even a scratch and only made the ice shudder a bit. As he turned to check on what his opponent planned to do with the ice structures, he was baffled upon finding what were now mirrors surrounding him holding a reflection of Haku. What is this jutsu? I gave you the option to surrender. Now you are trapped within my Makio Hyosho, demonic ice mirrors," Haku said as he spoke from all the mirrors. Dosu quickly ran to one of the openings, but an invisible force knocked him back into the middle of the dome. He looked a bit fearful at the reflections of the Senbon-armed boy as the mirrors swiftly surged forward and closed completely around him, leaving him in darkness. Outside the dome, Haku slowly emerged from one of the mirrors and turned to look at the structure with an unseen frown. Inside the dome of mirrors, Dosu was panicking as he punched and kicked at the mirror closest to him. In his fear of suffocating, as that was what the only thing he reasoned Haku closed the mirrors around him for, he decided to use his melody arm's strongest attack and quickly channeled his chakra to the instrument. With a determined flick of the finger, he set loose Hiskiomycin, vibrating sound drill, and promptly screamed as the vibrations bounced off the mirrors and returned his attack back at him. Covering his bleeding ears, his screams only increased his pain as more sound and vibrations joined the ones battering his body. Those outside flinched as they heard the screams while staring at the vibrating dome that gave a notable humming sound. When the screams abruptly cut out, Haku did another special hand seal and released the technique, causing the mirrors to dissipate into snow. Winner of the match, Haku Yuki, Hayate bellowed before motioning for the medics to hurry and take the injured Otto Genin to the infirmary. Haku silently made his way to the walkway where Kurama greeted him as he sat on Haku's head. "You did well. No need for gloom. You did give him the option to back out, unlike others who would not have done the same," Kurama told the boy offhandedly, causing Haku to smile sadly before huddling in one of the corners of the room as Aikano went down to the field. Aikano Iwa vs Choji Akamichi. The final match between Aikano Iwa and Choji Akamichi will now begin, Hayate announced. Aikano huffed as he looked at the nervous boy in front of him. "I suggest you give up now before you end up hurt, boy. You seem nervous and frankly not well trained if your body is any indication," Aikano remarked. Choji glared at the bigger figure in anger at the jab towards his physique. "I'll show you," he exclaimed and gritted his teeth as he heard his teammates encouraging him as well. Hayate coughed before exclaiming, "Hajime." Choji quickly did the specialized hand seal for his Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique, to expand his body to the size of a giant ball. Having completed his technique, he quickly tucked his limbs and released chakra from said limb areas to propel himself at Aikano, thus completing the technique known as the Nikuden Sensha, human bullet tank. Ino and Shikamaru kept cheering Choji on, but it was Asuma who remained quiet as he watched intently. Choji's Nikuden Sensha is a secret technique passed down in the Akamichi clan. It is a devastating move that can crush bones if a hit is taken directly. "I wonder how the Uzugai plans to counter it," Asuma thought with interest. Aikano merely cocked his arm back as he gathered a large amount of chakra on his fisted hand. Sensing this, every Jonin present save those of Uzu and Otto were trying to devise what technique he was going to perform. The Genin were all visibly shocked at the visible chakra emitting from the cocked fist. Shikamaru and Ino were the first to recover and started to scream at Choji. "Choji! Stop!" Shikamaru exclaimed at his best friend. "Choji, look out!" Ino yelled at the top of her lungs. Choji was unable to hear them as their yells were muffled from the sound of his rolling over the damaged field and as well as having his face tucked inside his body muffling all sounds from outside. Aikano waited until Choji was just in reach before letting loose his chakra-infused fist and sending the balled-up Choji crashing into the opposite wall. The power behind the punch was so strong that it stopped the rotation of Choji's Nikuden Sensha and embedded him completely into the wall where a pile of rubble and small clouds of dust were the only things visible. Medics immediately went to retrieve the boy as they were called to stand by immediately when Aikano was preparing his technique. The winner of the final match, Aikano Iwa, Hayate announced quickly before going to help the medics remove the rubble on top of the unconscious Choji aside. Sarutobi's eyes were shadowed beneath his hat as he sighed. A Kekkei Genkai user from Mizu no Kuni and a genin who can manipulate Doden, Earth, chakra with such mastery to make an Iwa shinobi green with envy. What are you planning, Naruto? Were the thoughts running through his head as the winning genin gathered in front of him after the medics left with the injured Akamichi. To all of you who won the rights to compete in the third test of the Chunin exams, one is missing, but congratulations to you all. Hayate exclaimed before leaving the floor to the Hokage, who continued on what consisted of the third test that will be held in a month's time. He explained the reason why it was going to be held in a month was to gather the feudal lords from the other countries as well as give time for the participants to come up with new strategies and techniques as their opponents now knew information about them and their styles of fighting. Anko approached the genin with a box. This will decide the order of your fights in the coming test. Pick only one. My number is 9. Aikano grunted. I've got 1. Kunato said while squinting at the paper. 7. Tamari stated. 5. Konkuro called. 3. Gaara stated. 8. Shikamaru grumbled. I have the number 10. Haku spoke softly. 2. Neji declared. 6. Shino stated. That will make Sasuke number 4. Ibiki stated while the Sarutobi agreed. These are the match arrangements for the third test's tournament. Kunato Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga Gaara vs Sasuke Uchiha. Konkuro vs Shino Aburame Tamari vs Nara Shikamaru. Aikano Iwa vs Haku Yuki Sarutobi sat in his office in the Hokage Tower finishing the last of the paperwork for the morning. Today was the day that the finals of the Chunin exams were going to be held in the newly built stadium. The residents and a vast part of the shinobi force were baffled at the sudden appearance of a large stadium that was almost 3 times as big as the old testing arena they had used for the Chunin exams. Those with knowledge about a certain Mokuton user would merely smile knowingly before continuing on with their tasks. The reason for the new stadium was due to the fact that a lot of people arrived to Konoha in waves as they wanted to see Uzushio's shinobi in action and in most cases gain information about how strong they were. The appearance of an Anbu member startled him as he was about to sign the last sheet and be done for the day. Hokage. Sama. Urgent news. We're being attacked by a giant monster we have no idea how to defeat. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow and grew curious at the news. He quickly stood up and took off his robes, leaving him in his old battle armor. What have you tried against the threat? The Hokage inquired as they made their way outside through the halls of the Hokage Tower. We've tried burning it with Kaiden Jutsu, shredding it with futon and soaking it with Suiden Jutsu, but all for naught. We tried using weapons and other types of techniques, but they proved to be no match for its regenerative ability. The Anbu reported with a hint of apprehension as they finally made it outside. Sarutobi looked at the Anbu with a hint of concern as he didn't know what kind of being could be so hard to kill that not even the Anbu could accomplish their task. All Biju were accounted for last he checked, so it had to be something else. As they neared the old Chunin exam arena, the Anbu suddenly stopped as both heard a rustling. From within the exam, the head of what appeared to be a giant white snake peeked out as it surveyed its surroundings. Orochimaru. Sarutobi spat. I should have known. Anbu, how couldn't you identify him? Sarutobi retorted as he looked towards the Anbu only to not find him there. As he turned back, he saw that the giant snake was right in front of him. Moving slowly back, Sarutobi noted something odd about the scales of the snake. Why do they look like flat squares? He thought as he bit his thumb and jumped back when the snake lunged at him. Making the proper hand seals, he called out his technique as he placed his hand on the ground. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Enku. Enma. Summoning technique. Monkey King. Enma. In a small eruption of smoke, Enma appeared and took in the situation. What have you gotten yourself into this time, Sarutobi? The Monkey King asked curiously before being interrupted. Quickly, Enma, transform. Enma transformed quickly at Sarutobi's order. Sarutobi quickly grabbed the transformed Enma and stared down at the snake monster. He noticed how odd his staff felt and almost sweat dropped as in closer inspection noticed it wasn't the adamantine staff that Enma usually transformed in but a giant office pen. Enma stopped joking about. An eye appeared on the side of the pen as Enma chided his summoner. Look closer, Sarutobi. This isn't an opponent you can defeat with blunt force or normal techniques. Truly, upon closer inspection the scales that he noticed to be oddly shaped scales were in fact not scales at all. The truth of the situation hit him hard and he almost faltered at the horror that was presented in front of him. It's a snake made of paperwork? The snake gave another lunge but Sarutobi quickly swiped his giant pen at the snake. The scales where the pen managed to write in fell to the ground and remained motionless. Focus, Sarutobi. Enma called out as the snake lunged again. Sarutobi dodged easily and countered effortlessly as only someone with years of experience against paperwork could do. No wonder it couldn't be defeated. This abomination has always managed to spawn from even a single document left behind, he thought with frustration and slight disgust. The fight lasted hours and almost took into the hours of the night, but just as the sun was setting the beast had been vanquished. Sarutobi, now surrounded by the Anbu who were in awe of his skill, dismissed Enma and decided to head to the Hokage mansion to rest after such a long battle. Back in the Hokage's office, the single sheet of paper left on the desk multiplied into 2 and continued to do so until a hefty pile remained. End dream sequence. Sarutobi sat up with a gasp and placed his hand over his breast to still his rapidly beating heart. That nightmare again, it's been haunting my dreams for a month. He thought furiously as he grabbed a napkin from the box near his nightstand, set aside for just that occasion. Inoichi said nothing was wrong and yet I still keep reliving that nightmare. He stared at the wall in front of his bed as he tried to remember the details of his dream. Bunching up the napkin, he was about to throw it into the nearby bin when he cursed. Shit. It was that last page. It spawned more. Lying back in his bed, he grumbled about the accursed paperwork before he decided it was time to wake up. With a barely hidden dread, he noted it was the day of the finals for the Chunin exams. Konohagakure gates. I'm so bored. Katetsu yawned as he stretched around in the greeting booth in front of the gates. Why do we even apply for this job anyway? Azumo pondered as he browsed through a book to ease his boredom. It's not like anything interesting ever happens, he said, which received an odd look from Katetsu. You did not just say those words. Katetsu spoke with a voice almost full with horror. Every time you've said those words something. Ahem. Happens. Katetsu and Azumo paled when they glanced at not just the person who cleared their throat, but the whole entourage behind the one they now noted as a woman that stood in front of their booth. Welcome to Konohagakure no Sato. Are you here to see the last stage of the exams? Azumo quickly spoke up as he received an annoyed look from the woman. The woman looked pretty young and wore a stylish red dress not commonly found near Hai no Kuni's territory that complemented her long straight red hair. She wore sunglasses that hid the color of her eyes and held an air of superiority around her. Chuckling drew the attention of the guards to an old man who was some ways behind that stood next to a teen. The old man seemed to be even older than the Sandaime Hokage from the amount of wrinkles that were shown on his face. He was bald except for an odd hairstyle that resembled a mohawk. The other notable feature was the black bandage wrapped around his eyes, which made them conclude that he may be blind. The teen next to the old man had white hair and 2 red dots on his forehead. Azumo immediately recognized him as a member of the Kagaya clan. The elder and teen were flanked by 2 masked shinobi, which by their posture were Anbu, class shinobi. What else would we be incoming for? There's not much to see in shinobi villages nowadays. The woman replied, irritated, before she turned to the still chuckling old man. Stop chuckling, you senile bag of old bones. I still don't believe you're a shinobi with the way you act. She spoke harshly, causing the old man to sigh but still retain his smile. With help from Kimimaro, the old man was led forward to the booth where the guards looked at him weirdly. Is there a problem, guard-san? The man asked as he turned his face to the side while seemingly staring at them. No sir, just surprised you're a shinobi. From which land do you hail? The man chuckled as he signed the papers for admission as Kimimaro led his hand to the place to sign. I get that a lot, so no worries. I'm from Uzushiogakure, here escorting the miss and the young man here. They're clients that were asked for our protection from their respective bosses. Oh, Azumo said sheepishly. Katetsu then took the chance to inquire further. What about you and those 2 guards? Since you're signing in, I'm guessing you'll also be attending the examination? Yes. We're here to give moral support in a sense. The old man chuckled out before walking into the village, followed by the others. Well, that went better than I hoped. Katetsu muttered as he started to browse the papers and checked they were all filled correctly. As he checked on their names in the name list, he froze as his hands trembled. No way. That was the actress Fuji Aria from the Princess Gale movies. She plays the role as the mistress of Princess Gale's nemesis Mao. Kotetsu murmured reverently, gaining a strange look from Izumo. "What?" Kotetsu asked, seeing the look. "You have too much free time," Izumo commented as he took the papers from Kotetsu and placed them in a box with the other forms from the arriving visitors. Unnoticed by Kotetsu, just below Fuji Aria's name was the signature of 1T Hyuga. Konohagakure Grand Stadium. 4 hours later. Chaos was the word that best described the current situation. With the victory of Kunato Uzumaki over Neji Hyuga, the battle postponement of Sasuke Uchiha and Gaara's fight, the forfeit of Kankuro against Shino Aburame, and the victory of Shikamaru Nara over Tamari, things seemed to look as if they'd end well. The Sandaime Hokage, the Yondaime Cage, the Azukage had gathered in the cage booth, which was located in front of the daimyo's booth. Flashback starts. Sarutobi greeted the Yondaime Cage, Kanta, as they met in the private entrance to the stadium. Two Anbu flanked the cages while the Shinobi Council stood to the side as the leaders greeted each other. Though the members of the Shinobi Council will go their separate ways around the stadium during the exam, they still needed to make an appearance as a show of respect. A thumping pattern called the attention of everyone as they saw an old man with a short cane whose decoration looked to be a dead bird's head approaching. He seemed to be guarded by two high-ranking shinobi and were approaching those gathered. Sume Inuzuka was the first to walk forward, with Hiyashi Hyuga following after as they blocked the path of the new party. "This is the private entrance of the stadium. You Anbu need to take your client to the other entrance at the front." Sume growled out before glaring at them in challenge. "Sume-san, you should be more courteous to guests." Hiyashi reprimanded the brash Inuzuka. Chuckles stopped Sume from retorting back at Hiyashi as the old man, who they now noticed had a rather macabre appearance in clothing, stepped past them along with his guards. "Hokage Sama, a pleasure to meet you. Cage Sama, I'm humbled to make your acquaintance." The old man greeted both while nodding his head. Before he could walk or talk any further, he sidestepped a Juken, gentle fist, strike from behind by Hiyashi. Unfazed by the surprise attack, he merely smacked the back of Hyuga leader's head with his cane and sent him sprawling to the ground. Everyone stood on edge and were preparing techniques to fight the old man as Sarutobi growled. "What is the meaning of this?" "Oh, I say it could mean self-defense or suicide really." The old man chuckled as Sume growled while Hiyashi struggled to get up. For some reason he could not properly move his limbs, as if they had been struck by his family's taijutsu style. "You should have taught those younger than you not to blatantly attack people stronger than themselves, especially cage-level shinobi." The old man spoke as he smiled, amused by Sarutobi's shock. "You're the Azukage, aren't you?" Sarutobi asked with narrowed eyes while the eyes of the cage widened. "I didn't expect someone as old as me to be powerful enough to be called a cage in these times, besides the deceased Sandaime Tsuchikage, Onoki," Sarutobi commented suspiciously. Hiyashi was finally able to stand with help from Shibi Aburame before glancing warily at the old man. Of course," the old man said as he tapped one of his long black fingernails against his chin. I think the only one who can really back up my claim will be him," he said as he pointed directly at Hiyashi, who leaned on Shibi for support as he could still not completely move his limbs freely. "Hiyashi? Do you know this man?" Sarutobi asked the Hyuga clan leader. "I've never met this man before, Hokage Sama. I'm sure I'd remember meeting him," Hiyashi spoke out. The annoying chuckle came back as the old man did a small bow. "Talbot Hyuga, Azukage of Uzushiogakure." Talbot introduced himself to those gathered as their eyes widened and their mouths opened slightly from the shock. The most shocked of them all was Hiyashi himself, which was proven by gasp and faint while remaining in Shibi's hold. Sume helped Shibi as the hidden unease was cleared to Sume, who used to be his teammate. "What did you mean by Hiyashi being able to identify you?" Sarutobi asked as he recovered from his shock. "He'll be able to tell you after he wakes up, in a few hours I'm guessing. Seeing me must have been too much excitement for him." Talbot chuckled as he made his way to the entrance. "Shall we?" Flashback ends. Hiyashi had been taken back to his clan's compound until he recovered from his ordeal and could do a proper report. When Gaara was about to release his bloodlust after being struck by Sasuke's Chidori, 1,000 birds, Naruto decided to start the invasion. An explosion rocked the cage box from where the cage were seated. Kanta landed in the middle of the arena near a shaking Gaara. Baki quickly appeared by his leader's side as he told Tamari and Kankuro to take Gaara away and to not attack any Konoha shinobi. Not knowing the situation, Sasuke followed after Gaara in order to stop his escape. Just as Kanta and Baki were going to return to and help the Hokage, Talbot appeared before them with a woman with red hair done in a twin bun hairstyle. Chains emerged from the earth and shot towards the sky before a dome-like barrier cut them off from the rest of the others in the stadium. I'm afraid we can't have you interfering with Sarutobi and Naruto's discussion, Talbot said cheerfully as the woman took out a cushion and sat down on the ground. I'm not dealing with this, old geezer. I'll only provide the barrier unless ordered to do otherwise. The woman replied as her eyes with black sclera held boredom in them. Of course, Mito-chan. I'm capable of handling things just fine, Talbot reassured the Uzumaki woman as he held his birdbone cane. Sarutobi and Naruto faced each other while Orochimaru stood at Naruto's side. Orochimaru had masqueraded as one of the Cage's guard and had kicked the sand leader towards the arena while Naruto had used the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, to appear before Sarutobi on the roof of the stadium's side building. So you're working for Orochimaru, Naruto-kun. Sarutobi spoke disappointed. The old Cage took notice of the 4 guards that surrounded them as they created a barrier. Your invasion plan doesn't seem to be going well, he spoke as he saw his subordinates along with the Cages easily handle the sound shinobi. The Cage is a good friend of mine and warned me of what you were planning, Orochimaru. However, I didn't expect for Naruto-kun to join you in your foolish plans. Ku, Sarutobi. Sensei, you are quite mistaken. I don't think it's my right to tell you, but perhaps our small friend here will enlighten you. Naruto-kun? Orochimaru said while motioning towards the blonde. Naruto stared ahead before turning to Orochimaru and raising his lone visible right eye. I'm sorry, did you say something? With a slight eye twitch, Orochimaru motioned towards Sarutobi. The invasion plan, Naruto-kun? Orochimaru said slightly annoyed. Oh yes. I was just distracted by the perverted toad. Naruto replied as if it explained everything before addressing the floor. Unless you want me to drag you out myself, stop hiding behind your teacher, Jiraiya. Naruto stated as he ignored Sarutobi and focused on the old man's shadow instead. Frowning grimly, Sarutobi waited as Jiraiya inflated from being flat while separating from his shadow by cancelling his Gamadera. Kageyatsuri no Jutsu, Toad Flatness. Shadow Manipulation Technique. Their plans to have Jiraiya help Sarutobi's movements and leave the possibility for a sneak attack from the Toad Sannin against their opponents now useless. Orochimaru, entertain your old teammate while I help the Hokage with his resignation. Naruto ordered the Snake Sannin, who was shocked as he had not felt Jiraiya hidden in the Hokage's shadow. Taking off his disguise, Orochimaru ran off to the other side of the barrier before being followed by Jiraiya at Sarutobi's nod. Naruto stared at the Hokage before quickly going through some shorthand seals. Suiryuden no Jutsu, Water Release, Water Dragon Bullet Technique. From out of nowhere a dragon made of water roared as it barreled towards Sarutobi. Sarutobi in response did a series of hand seals as he turned the part of the roof in front of himself into mud from which a dragon's head rose. Doden. Doryu Taiga, Earth Release, Earth Flow River, Doden. Doryuden, Earth Release, Earth Dragon Bullet. Kaden. Karyuden, Fire Release, Fire Dragon Bullet. The dragon's head quickly opened its jaws and fired a barrage of mud bullets at the water dragon. The bullets were ignited by Sarutobi using the Karyuden. They struck the water dragon, which cooled the bullets back into earth while disrupting the water technique. The now cooled earth bullets continued on their path towards Naruto. In retaliation, Naruto did a set of hand seals before clapping his hands. Kachiyose. Edo Tensai. Summing. Impure World Resurrection. In front of him rose 2 ornate coffins that blocked the earth bullets while remaining unscathed. Impossible! Sarutobi exclaimed as he saw the emergence of the 2 coffins. How do you know that jutsu? Turning rage-filled eyes, he looked towards Orochimaru. How far have you fallen, Orochimaru? Does your obsession know no bounds? Sarutobi murmured disgusted. As he was about to go after Orochimaru for answers, he was stopped by Naruto. You are mistaken, Hiruzen. The reason I know this jutsu isn't because of Orochimaru. Naruto replied with a serious face as the lids on both coffins fell to the floor with a thud. It's only natural I know this technique, he said ominously as a figure walked out from each coffin. You monster. Sarutobi said as tears fell down his face. They look exactly how I remember them. The first figure wore red armor and had long black hair. He was known once as the Shodai Hokage who fought against Uchiha Madara and was able to subdue the Kyuubi using his Mokuton techniques. He was known as Hashirama Senju. The second figure wore blue armor and had short white hair framed by a metal plate with Konoha's symbol on it. He was one known as the Nidaime Hokage, who was a master of Suiryuden techniques, space, time techniques, and infamous for the creation of the greatest abomination of a technique known to the shinobi world, the Edo Tensei. He was known as Tobarama Senju. You've grown old, Saru. Stepping to the side, Talbot evaded a golden spike made from gold dust. Oh, now that wasn't very nice, Talbot commented before he was distracted. Baki took the opportunity from the Cage's attack to try and close the distance on Mito. However, before he could close the distance, Talbot appeared in front of him and poked him repeatedly with his long blackened nails along his whole body before he could react. Now you wouldn't want to hurt a lady, would you? Talbot taunted as Baki fell to the ground unable to move. Talbot swiftly kicked Baki towards Kanta before turning to Mito, who seemed to have taken out a tea set and was brewing some tea. I hope you made a barrier around yourself before starting tea making. He asked with a smile. Mito glared at him before making a smaller barrier around her by making a few extra chains. Good, good. Talbot praised her, which received an even harsher glare from her. Turning back to Kanta, he sidestepped another spike and started walking towards the Cage. Kanta of the Gold Dust, known as the Yondaime Cage of Sanagakure. I'm afraid you won't be walking out of here alive, he said with a grandfatherly smile that took Kanta off guard. Talbot threw his cane near Mito's location before adapting a most peculiar stance. Above in the stands, Ko defended Hinata and Hanabi as he was in charge of them in Hieshi's absence. With his Baikugan active, he noted with shock the summoning of two of the past Hokages and the battle between two of the Sannin. However, what shocked him the most was the quick way the old Azukage had dispatched Baki, who was widely known as the Cage's right-hand man. Ko quickly launched an attack on an auto shinobi that got too close to his liking to the clan head's daughters before telling them to move slowly towards the exit of the stadium. A glimpse back at the arena where the Cage was fighting almost made him falter. The stance that the old Azukage had adopted looked exactly like the Juken stance of their clan, with the exception of the odd finger movements the old man displayed while keeping his fingers slightly apart. Orochimaru and Jiraiya had yet to begin getting serious. Given the amount of time since they fought each other, they opted to begin their measuring of each other using taijutsu. At the moment it was Orochimaru who had the upper hand with his Habi, snake, style. Jiraiya jumped back as his Gamma, toad, style was not holding out well against Orochimaru's more speedy and flexible style. Give it up, Orochimaru. This invasion was a stupid idea from the very beginning. Suna was not going to betray us and you're outmatched. I'm certain that Sensei can subdue Naruto and you can't take down the both of us. Jiraiya tried to dissuade the snake Sannin. His response was answered in the form of laughter from Orochimaru. Ha ha ha, you are a fool, Jiraiya. You severely underestimate us, especially Naruto-kun. What do you mean? Jiraiya asked with narrowed eyes as his old teammate kept laughing. Orochimaru merely smirked before placing his hands on his face, and to the shock of Jiraiya dragged what was now revealed as a flesh mask from his face. Jiraiya's eyes bulged out at the beauty before he lecherously stared, his hand twitching to lean forward to touch or jot down ideas on his notebook. He quickly composed himself and narrowed his eyes as he remembered that the woman was masquerading as Orochimaru. Who are you? He shouted at the unknown woman. Why, don't you recognize me, Jiraiya? It's me, Orochimaru, the woman said before giggling. Said giggle turned to mad laughter which made a shiver go down Jiraiya's back, whether from excitement or disgust was never to be known. I'm sure Sarutobi Sensei told you of that technique, Orochimaru said as a smirk graced his womanly features. I'll place this face back since you're more familiar with it. You've become a monster, Orochimaru, Jiraiya stated seriously before he attacked. Memorial, fanboy and old friends Naruto and Sasori made their way through a small forested path in the lands of Kusagakure. They were nearing a small town where they would ask information on any suspicious characters. He wasn't going to recruit just any kind of shinobi to join Akatsuki, but the ones he considered extremely talented. The smell of blood was the first thing to reach them before they even saw the edge of the town. Child and teen looked at each other before continuing on at a much cautious pace. As they entered the town, the first thing they saw out of place was the moderate amount of bodies lying around. The other notable detail was the strange symbol of a triangle inside a circle written in blood decorating the ground in several places and on some buildings. A certain strange symbol that was nagging at Naruto's memory. As they ventured deeper into the town, the young Uzumaki froze at what he heard while the young prodigious puppeteer merely glanced at the child with curiosity. Praise Jashin. Shit, was the muttered word from Naruto as he quickly looked around. Sasori stood at alert at hearing clearly the curse word, which made him think that the danger was serious if Naruto, who held much power, lost his composure. Mad laughter reached their ears and they were able to pinpoint the location of the voice. Naruto dragged his hand over his face as he thought on the idiocy that he was about to be tormented too. Stay here, Sasori. Keep alert and hide in case someone appears to investigate. Naruto ordered seriously before walking into the alley where he saw a young silver-haired man laid down upon one of the symbols and a corpse some distance away at the end of the alley. The man looked towards Naruto from the corner of his eye before smiling manically and speaking at the blonde Uzumaki. Another sacrifice? Lord Jashin will be most pleased. He chuckled before standing up and grabbing the handle of a tri-bladed scythe. Face lighted with glee, Hidan rushed with blade raised at the child that he must have missed among from the village. He was almost close enough to reach the child before the child opened his mouth to speak or scream. He didn't know nor care. Jubi's nuts, the child said with a straight face. Hidan face planted on the ground. Naruto stared impassively and waited. PHFT. Ahahahahahahahaha. Hidan flailed on the ground as he laughed uncontrollably. Naruto looked amused for a moment before turning to the roof of one of the buildings of that compromised the alley. You can come out, Talbot. I know, was the response he got before the old man jumped down from the building and landed in front of the two. Talbot threw a glance at the still laughing Hidan before turning to the boy. How? He asked and received a raised eyebrow in response. Of course. I'll stop looking while you tell me. He chuckled before he received a nod from Naruto. You know I hate that annoying ability of yours. Though I'm wondering how you're even alive. Naruto pondered while tilting his head to the side. To answer your question, I was in a sense reincarnated. Mostly without any memories of my past lives. Naruto said offhandedly. Jashin. Sama, was the only warning Naruto received before being tackle-hugged by the crazed Jashinist. A grunt followed before the silver-haired man clung to the blonde and started to recount the experiences since their last meeting. I have someone waiting, so we should at least get to a more appropriate setting. Naruto muttered while trying to shake Hidan off. Having picked up Sasori and receiving odd looks from all of them, Naruto finally sat down and explained to Talbot and Hidan why Sasori was with him and how they met. He explained to Sasori that Hidan was an immortal due to an accident many years ago when the Sage of Six Paths, Naruto's first life, tried to heal the infected body of a young man. The accident occurred after the sealing of the Jubi, which had affected the sage's techniques due to small amounts of the Biju's chakra that were inside his system. The infection on the young man itself was caused by the exposure of the Jubi's chakra prior to the sealing. The young man was the only survivor but seemed to be nearing death if nothing was done. As the sage started his technique on the almost dead young man, his technique was overpowered from the Jubi's chakra and caused the accident. The young man, Hidan, had accidentally gained an immortal body and had proclaimed his devotion to the sage. The sage had left the man do as he wished as the sage started to spread the knowledge of chakra. The initial devotion turned into a crush, then love, became an obsession, jumped to godly devotion before finally turning into a mixture of all of them. Sasori moved uncomfortably in his chair after the story before he asked about Talbot with a hint of apprehension. Naruto looked at Talbot as he didn't know either why the man was alive let alone how. Talbot summarized his story as much as he could. He was a friend of the sage after he had been saved from being trampled by the Jubi before the sage discovered chakra. After the Jubi's sealing, Talbot had started a family with a girl from his hometown before he moved to a small farm in what now was Tsuchi no Kuni. His wife was pregnant when a clan had attacked them when they had gone to deliver their goods to a nearby town. The clan had killed his wife and unborn child and left him blinded on the road. He had survived the ordeal and trained to get revenge on them. The sage had heard of what happened to his friend before he went to visit him and tried to return his vision. The healing was a success. It returned the eyesight of the young man, but it had the side effect of letting him witness the immediate future. Talbot swore his loyalty to the sage that day, but the sage dismissed it, saying he already had enough attention from a nearly crazed, too devoted young man. Talbot continued to train and mastered his future sight. He gained his revenge by destroying the clan and then marrying a woman who had met on his previous travels before he was able to take his revenge. His new wife had conceived a son who had milky white eyes, which at the present will be considered one of the famous dojutsu in the shinobi world. After the sage died and separated the Jubi into 9 sentient chakra beings and a dead shell, he was visited by a crazed Hidan. Hidan had been trying to develop a technique to share his immortality with the sage. He had finished the technique but was rather late as the sage passed on after teaching his children and sending them out to the world. The distraught Hidan had told him of the technique before asking him if he wanted to accompany him to spread the word of Jashin. As he started to call the sage in his godly devotion, he accepted the offer and joined Hidan in his travels. He still made sure to visit his family but stopped after it had grown into a large clan and had begun to fight with the others, especially the Uchiha. Naruto nodded after all the storytelling before turning to Talbot while Hidan was spouting shouts on how great he was and how much he had missed him among other things. What do you think of becoming the leader of a certain village I plan to revive? he asked with a grin at the old man. Kanta narrowed his eyes at the old man before him and frowned. There has not been any information on a stray main branch member, even less an elderly one. Shaking his head, he knelt down and waited for the Hyuga to make a move. Sending a glance towards Baki, he couldn't help but frown at the easiness in which his opponent incapacitated his Jonin. The results of the technique he used seemed similar to the normal Jukin. Though why give many taps instead of one for the kill? Why the odd stance? He pondered. If you won't make a move, I guess I'll have to start, Talbot stated, drawing his attention from his thoughts. Jumping backwards to evade a frontal kick to the head, he was shocked at the speed the old man displayed. Placing his hands on the ground, he sent a large wave of gold dust from the ground towards his opponent. Talbot merely smiled at the incoming wave as a black ink substance seemed to surround him before the dust crashed into him. Kanta's eyes narrowed at the lack of noise and the feeling of not hitting his target. He dashed forward when he saw a flash of black clothing behind him. His quick thinking saved him from a poke to the back before he sent another wave at the old man, who merely smiled back at him. "You'll tire yourself out this way, Kanta-kun," Talbot said good-naturedly as the black substance surrounded him again. However, differing from last time, Talbot disappeared from the eyes of the cage way before the gold dust could reach. Eye widening, Kanta looked behind him only to receive a poke in the shoulder as he dodged a poke to the side. "Shit," he muttered as he grabbed his shoulder only to blink as he felt nothing wrong with it. Narrowing his eyes, he placed his hands on the gold dust beneath him and attempted to create a replica of his son's Suna no Tate, shield of sand, only to yell in pain as he felt his shoulder burn. He noted it was the shoulder Talbot had poked earlier and gritted his teeth at the pain. "What is this?" he growled at the elder cage. "Ah, that is my special assassination technique," Talbot said proudly. "It can be considered the precursor to the current Jukin of the Hyuga clan. While the Jukin can damage internal organs or close tenketsu, chakra points, of the chakra pathway, this little old version actually, destroy could be the word, though crumble or crack can define it better. It's a technique that only shows its true colors when the one affected by it uses chakra through the damaged tenketsu," he explained with a malicious chuckle as he saw the widening of Kanta's eyes and his slightly pale complexion. "Don't worry though, you won't have to worry about such things as you'll soon be dead," he replied with a grandfatherly smile. "Now let old Talbot Oja-san help you pass on," Talbot said cheerily as his right arm was covered in the inky substance. Gritting his teeth at being insulted as if a child his uninjured hand to manipulate his dust, though it could be visibly seen that his technique was weakened. Making the best of the situation, he shaped the dust into a tendril and used it a whip to attack Talbot directly. He watched Talbot dodge before feeling a sharp pain in his chest. He looked again towards Talbot, who remained a distance in front of him, and grimly that it was true. He fell forward as Talbot's arm returned to its rightful place. "2 complete short warps and 1 partial short warp. I have plenty to spare for a warp hole back to Uzu," Talbot thought as he took out an empty vial from within the many pockets in his robe. He placed his bloodied hand over the vial and collected as much blood as he could before stashing the vial safely in the confines of his robe. He motioned for Mito to drop the barrier around her as he made his way to the cage's corpse. Now what to do with this, he pondered as Mito approached him. "What do you plan to do with the corpse and the other one?" Mito asked with genuine curiosity. Talbot tapped his chin in contemplation, seemingly ignoring her question. Before she could smack him for ignoring her, he spoke up. "We'll leave the other one alive and let Suna collect him and the corpse. I think the blood sample I took will be enough for Naruto. Kun's Edo Tensai. TCH. Very well, though you'll be helping me get back to my hotel before they notice I've been gone," she retorted. "Of course," Talbot replied kindly as the inky substance surrounded his hand before swirling into a vertical floating disc. "Ladies first." Talbot smiled. "Cheeky old man." Mito grumbled as she stepped into the inky portal. With its user no longer present, the barrier disappeared. Suna Shinobi dropped down immediately to check on their cage as well as Baki. Talbot turned to them and waved as he walked through the portal and disappeared. He was furious. Wait, he was more than furious, he was raging. Tobarama's icy eyes landed on his crying student. "You've grown old, Saru." His tone was dead and did not betray his raging emotions. "Sarutobi? Is that you?" Hashirama squinted. Hiruzen merely looked down and wiped his eyes. "As touching as this is, I did not come here for a reunion with our senile student." Naruto's word made them jerk back into reality as Tobarama nodded. "Hashirama, go restrain Jiraiya," Naruto ordered. "But I want to fight Saru." Hashirama tried to complain against his orders. "Go. Now," Naruto stated with authority. With a depressing aura around him, Hashirama grumbled as he went to help the snake Sanin. Tobirama, let's give our dear student hell. Naruto stated as he removed his daimyo's robes at the same time as Sarutobi removed his Hokage robes. Placing a hand on the eye patch over his left eye, he yanked the eye patch off and revealed his active Rinnegan. While Sarutobi donned his old armor that was once signature of the clan wars, Naruto donned a white cloak with a high collar which revealed a necklace with 6 red magatama around his neck. On the back of his cloak was a stylized Rinnegan with 9 black magatama in 3 rows beneath it. Beneath the cloak he wore standard shinobi pants and a black sleeveless shirt. He had black shinobi sandals. Along with the robes went the hat which displayed Naruto's white streaked blonde hair that some of which spiked into 2 horn-like spikes while the rest spiked slightly. You have been a great disappointment, Sarutobi, Tobirama said coldly and with a hint of venom. Sarutobi picked up on the pronoun that Naruto. What do you mean, Sarutobi asked warily. Has he lost his mind or has he gone off the deep end? He thought before the revealing of the famed Rinnegan made his breath hitch in surprise. The Rinnegan, just how did you come to possess it? He ignored the sting of Tobirama's words in favor of taking a better grasp on how much a threat Naruto will be. Tobirama himself was going to be difficult to deal as it was, so he did not need another powerhouse helping his old sensei. Tobirama flashed through a few hand seals as water materialized around him. Sweeten. Sui Shoha, water release. Water colliding wave. A massive wave rose into the air before crashing forward towards Sarutobi. Seems the talks have ended. Sarutobi frowned as he did quick hand seals. Doden. Doryuheki, earth release. Earth. Style wall. He spat a massive amount of earth. Natured chakra forward in front of himself. A colossal wall of earth rose in front of Sarutobi as the massive wave collided with the earthen structure. Tobirama remained still as he moved his hands to the side and made the wave go around the wall. Sarutobi quickly escalated to the top of the wall to escape the wave. He bit his thumb and did the proper hand seals before placing his hand on the ground as he molded his chakra. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Enku. Enma. Summoning technique. Monkey King. Enma. Following the familiar eruption of smoke from a summoning, Enma appeared crouching in front of Sarutobi. Taking a look around, he was displeased of what he was seeing before his eyes landed on Naruto and he rubbed the back of his head in irritation as Naruto stared unflinchingly back. This is a fine mess you've brought me into, Sarutobi. Orochimaru aside, you couldn't have picked the worst person for me to go against. What do you mean? Have you met Naruto before, Enma? Sarutobi asked with curiosity. Enma flinched before shrugging. I only know of him by reputation. The only thing I can tell you is that no summon animal can fight against him unless he gives his permission. This was an order that each elder have given to their respective clans. Enma muttered before he glanced back at Naruto and saw him nod. Enma moved through several hand seals before calling out his technique. Henge. Konganioi. Transformation. Adamantine Nioi. In Enma's place a thick black staff with golden ends stood vertically before being grabbed by Hiruzen. Grabbing the staff tightly he jumped forward as something blasted the bottom of the sturdy wall he was perched on. Shinra Tensai. Almighty push. Naruto words drifted to them. What was that? Is it a technique of the Rinnegan or something else? Sarutobi tried to analyze the technique that destroyed his wall. He frowned at the thought of being taken lightly as he landed on the wet tiled ground. He dodged a leg sweep from Tobirama and blocked the incoming punch with Enma before jumping over to get close to Naruto. As he got closer to Naruto, Sarutobi made Enma extend to try to take him by surprise. A metallic clang reached his ears as he frowned at being blocked. The pristine blade of Kusanagi was held elegantly in Orochimaru's hand as he blocked with all the strength he could muster. An eye snapped open on the adamantine staff before a clawed hand grabbed Orochimaru by the neck and flung far to the side. Sarutobi took the chance to lunge forward with the staff to hit Naruto but was once again stopped. Sarutobi had only but a moment to show his surprise at Naruto stopping his lunge with a single hand before he was catapulted backwards several meters by an invisible force. This jutsu again. He thought in frustration. Enma, you're dismissed. I want you to leave so you can warn the village, please, as a last favor. Sarutobi said before receiving a nod from the Monkey King. As Enma disappeared by dismissing himself, Sarutobi created 4 Kage Bushin. With determined eyes and heavy frowns they went through 9 hand seals before ending by clapping their hands. I have to throw everything in this gamble. I just hope I can outspeed Naruto's technique. He thought grimly before noticing the formation of the Shinigami, Death God, behind him and his clones. So that's the Shinigami. With Jiraiya, Orochimaru ducked a fist from Jiraiya and gained some distance by giving the white-haired pervert a kick in the chest. This gave Orochimaru some breathing space, which he used to summon the snake that held his Kusanagi within its body. Now with his sword in hand, he watched as Jiraiya recovered before the Toad Sannin went through hand seals quickly. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Fire release. Great fireball technique. Jiraiya intoned as he sent a massive fireball towards Orochimaru. The fiery ball of death left a trail of destroyed tiles in its wake as it made its way to the snake Sannin in a flash before said woman could defend. Orochimaru flailed and ran towards Jiraiya holding his sword in preparation of a downward slash, but Jiraiya quickly moved to the side and gained some distance from him. Orochimaru continued to flail before he fell to the ground unmoving. Small vibrations made him jump farther back by instinct while enabling him to miss being grabbed, then crushed by about half a dozen large thick snakes that broke through the tiled floor where he previously stood. A side glance told him that the burned Orochimaru was actually a Doden Cage Bunshin, Earth Release Shadow clone, that was drying out from the intensity of the flames. I think I better regroup with Sensei instead, we'll both end up exhausted this way. Making a quick decision, he went through the hand seals for another Gokakyu and promptly released said fireball towards the group of snakes. Mostly to destroy them and keep Orochimaru momentarily distracted. He made the ram seal for the Shunshin no Jutsu, body flicker technique, and was almost to the other side of the roof before a punch to the chest made him crash to the ground. What the fuck hit me? Jiraiya groggily thought. Shit, I feel like a drunk. Raging Tsunade just hit me. As he thought, this large roots emerged from the ground and bound his limbs, disabling his escape. Shit. I got to get out of here. Jiraiya panicked before a hearty laugh snapped him from his thoughts. Ha ha ha, you're quite good at fighting. I could sense both of you and I'm impressed. You must be Hiruzen's other student, right? Ha ha ha. Jiraiya could only stare dumbly as the Shodai Hokage sat across from him while Orochimaru emerged from the ground with a frown on his face. His face now back to that of his old male body. I had things under control, Hashirama. Sama. Orochimaru said with displeasure. His frown turned down deeper when he only received a cheerful laugh from the man. A tick mac appeared on his forehead before he quickly glanced to the side as if he was called for. Glancing back to Jiraiya, Orochimaru gave a superior smirk to the old pervert before he quickly went to the other side of the roof they were fighting on. Jiraiya panicked as he knew that Orochimaru was sly enough to ambush their old sensei while he was distracted. In a risky move on his part and taking advantage of his bound position, he gathered a burst of natural chakra in record time and released it in a blast from his body. As the natural chakra was expelled quickly, it didn't endanger him, nor was it enough to enter sage mode or turn him into a frog. However, the blast actually loosed the hold from the wood bindings enough for him to try to slide out of them. A shocked Hashirama looked on with unconcealed pride as he recognized the nature of the chakra that Hiruzen's student unleashed. He stood up quickly and was about to have the bindings tighten, but was too late as Jiraiya slid out and used the Shunshin no Jutsu again to escape. With Sarutobi, I have to throw everything in this gamble. I just hope I can outspeed Naruto's technique. He thought grimly before noticing the formation of the Shinigami, Death God, behind him and his clones. So that's the Shinigami. He saw as the Shinigami prepared itself and cringed as its hand went into his soul, a cold shiver going down his spine. He motioned for two of the clones to go do their task as he prepared himself. He saw Orochimaru recovering some ways from Naruto before taking a steady breath. With Jiraiya was congratulating himself on his ingenious thinking on how he escaped from the Shodai's Mokuton. A small part of him thought that it would not have been possible if the Shodai had not made the bindings as weak as they were, but it was stomped out by the worry for his sensei. A blinding pain in his chest brought him out of his gloating thoughts as he coughed out blood and had his breath taken. Yet again he was punched out of his technique, and this time the one who punched him broke a few ribs. Lying on the ground, he saw with blurry vision as the Nidaime Hokage walked up to him before he lost consciousness. I expected better from Hiruzen's student, Tobirama commented as Hashirama approached the both of them. Ha ha ha, I think he was holding back. Did you know he used the basics of Senjutsu to escape my wood bindings? That was so cool. Hashirama laughed and slung an arm over his brother's shoulder. He should have went all out from the start. Casting a last look towards the Toad Sannin, both sat down near the self-proclaimed super pervert and waited for the retreat signal. With Sarutobi sending a small amount of chakra to his legs, he and the last remaining Cage Bushin dashed at their fastest speed towards Naruto and Orochimaru respectively. Sarutobi saw his clone surprise Orochimaru, then saw Naruto raising his hand towards him. That technique again, I have to be faster. He added more chakra to his legs and with sheer determination reached Naruto and moved his hands away to the side before gripping both his shoulders. He noted Naruto's eyes widening from surprise as he tightened his hold. "I've got you. This is the end, Fuin, seal," Sarutobi yelled out. With his words, the hand of the Shinigami passed through Sarutobi and into Naruto where it took hold of the boy's soul. Naruto grimaced as he weakly took hold of the astral arm of the Shinigami that was trying to remove his soul. "You've gone senile to think that it ends so easily." Naruto huffed. "It's not over until your opponent is dead." Sarutobi smirked. "This jutsu will remove your soul and seal it along with mine inside the Shinigami's stomach. Our souls will fight for eternity, but it's not a bad price to pay to stop all of you. It's the end for all of us." He laughed weakly as he stared into Naruto's eyes. "Where did I go wrong? What happened to you, Naruto?" Sarutobi thought sadly. Sarutobi was shocked when Naruto's eyes narrowed in anger as the boy's chakra started to be released harmlessly from his body. He quickly tried to take Naruto's soul out before whatever the boy planned could work but was stopped dead in his tracks by Naruto's words. "Not a bad price to pay, you say? This abomination should never have been made." Naruto's Rinnegan gained a slight dark tone as he yelled. "Ninjendo, human path." To Sarutobi's surprise, he saw as the Shinigami stopped removing the boy's soul. Taking a look behind him, he saw that the Shinigami had tilted its head to the side as if in confusion before trying to pull on the soul again. "What have you done?" Sarutobi roared as he figured Naruto's technique was the cause for the Shinigami unable to move its arm back. Naruto glared at Sarutobi before he smirked darkly. "I'm undoing a grave mistake. You see, this Shinigami, as you grimly like to call it, is a living seal. An abomination that tortures the souls of its victims for its amusement while its hunger for souls knows no bounds. And this kind of seal, well, let's just say that it bothers me a lot. Gakido, Preta path." To Sarutobi's horror, he saw as Naruto's soul was being dragged back inside, though the true reason for his horror was not that alone. The Shinigami itself was being dragged into Naruto and seemed to be struggling against the hole. Though the Shinigami seemed to be struggling, it did not seem to be in a panic and merely took the dagger from its mouth and tried to sever the connection to their souls. But as the blade descended in between Sarutobi and Naruto, it was swiftly grabbed by a third hand that emerged from Naruto's shoulder through his cloak. "Shirado, Asura path," Naruto intoned as he glared at the living seal. Sarutobi was helpless to stop Naruto as the Shinigami was slowly completely consumed. When the did was finished, Sarutobi stumbled back and almost fell to his knees from exhaustion, his chakra having been mostly used by the creation of the clones and the summoning. The same couldn't be said for Naruto as Sarutobi saw him fall to his knees. He rummaged through his armor and found a kunai and approached the young boy. "I'm sorry, but this must be done." Sarutobi apologized, his voice filled with determination. Before he could say anything else, his hand went towards his mouth on instinct and caught the spray of blood from a sudden cough. A blade protruded from Sarutobi's chest and the old man blurrily recognized it as Orochimaru's Kusanagi. Turning to look behind him, he was surprised at who held the blade. "Why you? But I was sure I sealed you, Kukuku, that was merely a clone, Sarutobi." "Sensei," Orochimaru grinned before approaching Naruto and helping him to his feet. The sound of 4 smoke eruptions were the only warning before the dark barrier around them shimmered then faded. Orochimaru looked at Naruto in concern before he moved his fingers in a strange motion and had the Kusanagi pass completely through Sarutobi. He grabbed the bloodied sword as it neared him, staining his hands in his teacher's blood. "It seems we have overstayed our welcome. Yane, Sarutobi. Sensei," Orochimaru stated before he disappeared in a Konoha Shunshin, leaf body flicker, leaving behind small leaves that fell down. Moments later, the Anbu appeared out of standard Shunshins, body flickers, to retrieve the dying Hokage. The Hokage waved them away when they tried to administer first aid and merely watched over the village he had sworn to protect. "I'm too old to keep protecting them, someone new has to take up the mantle," he thought sadly. He motioned for the Anbu commander to come near and whispered 5 words that will seal the fate of his village. It will be his true last gamble, as it could either lead the village to ruin or lead it to prosperity. "Have Jiraiya retrieve Tsunade, she's Hokage. Now." Somewhere really cold snow fell slowly from the sky, landing softly upon the docks. A small penguin was at the end of the dock where it stood vigilant. It turned its head slightly when it first saw the small dot in the horizon. It remained still even as shouting voices finally reached it and the form was revealed to be a small wooden boat with 2 passengers. The passengers were wearing some odd black coats with red clouds. "Are we there yet?" a voice drawled out in boredom. For the 345th time, "We are not there yet." This time it was an irritated rough voice. "Are we there yet? Do you want me to dunk your head again into the sea? But I'm bored. Hidan whined. The tallest of them suddenly stood before picking up the other man and placing him like a sack of potatoes on his shoulders before grabbing something round from the ground. Are you fucking money? Obsessed bastard. Don't grab me by the hair. It fucking hurts. Youch. You did that on purpose. Hidan, shut up. Kakuzu said as he was about to get off the boat before he took notice of the penguin standing on the dock. That's odd. Hidan looked forward from his position in Kakuzu's grip and stared at the penguin. Fucking hell and Juby's boobs. This ain't fucking snow country, you bastard. Where the fucking hell are we? Kakuzu stared with glazed eyes to the right at a large snow-covered sign which read, "Welcome to the land of tundras. This is your fault, idiot," he stated now with manic eyes before he threw Hidan's head back on the boat. "If it weren't for you trying to kill the sailors back in Tea Country, I wouldn't have to row and listen to your goddamned mouth while stuck on a boat in the middle of the sea. We need to head north." "Didn't we already fucking rode to the north? How far do we need to fucking go?" "This is in the far south, you blabbermouth. Snow country is to the far north of the elemental countries." Naruto's mindscape waking up inside his mindscape was not a new experience for Naruto. After unraveling the Yondaime Hokage's seal, he visited constantly in order to check on the connections to the various Rakudo Juinjutsu. The 9 black pillars still stood in the middle and the chair still looked comfortable as always. The only new additions that were glaringly obvious was a small table with a crystal orb in front of the chair as well as the spectral form of the Shinigami near one of the columns with torches. Blinking his eyes, he noted the living seal trying to paw and grab at the flames on the torches of the columns but recoiling after being burned by the flames. Shaking his head slightly, Naruto made a gesture with his hand towards a green crackling flame on a column and then to the Shinigami. He was not left wanting as twin streams of green lightning extended from the flame in its designated torch and grabbed hold of both of the Shinigami's wrists. The living seal struggled immediately after being bound. It tried to bring its arms together in an attempt to cut the bindings with its ceremonial dagger, but the bindings held strong. It kept struggling until it seemed to just give up and remain motionless. Naruto walked without caution towards it and grabbed the back of its head in a tight grip which made the Shinigami struggle again to try and remove its bindings to attack the one near it. Naruto chuckled darkly as it tried to escape his tight grip before his smile broke into a mad grin. "This will hurt you a lot more than it will hurt me, I assure you. Not that you understand me, do you?" Naruto mocked it. A spark suddenly came from the hand that held the Shinigami's head before, with a bright flash, said hand burst into bright red flames. The Shinigami jerked wildly in Naruto's grip as it pulled at its bindings with all the strength it could muster, but it could not escape the tight grip. Unknown to the living seal that was the Shinigami, the red flames were not only burning its head but causing it to disintegrate. It only took minutes before Naruto was left grasping nothing but air. With a frown he dismissed the flames surrounding his hand. He made a hand gesture and the green lightning that served as binds retreated back to the torch with its same colored flame. No longer being held up by the flame bindings, the Shinigami's body fell forward with a thud onto the floor, its dagger falling from its limp hand. Walking towards the dagger, Naruto picked it up and returned to the motionless body. Deep breaths now, he told himself as he took a deep breath before plunging the dagger into the limp body's stomach. After he cut a big enough hole, several small orbs of light were released and floated around the room. One in particular started to approach the black pillars in the center before Naruto snapped his fingers and a wall of rainbow-colored flames sprang up in a circle protecting the area. The small orb kept moving on and clashed into the wall and was immediately disintegrated. Another wave of his hand dismissed the majority of the souls within the chamber, sending them to the pure world. Unknown location. Uzushiogakure Talbot snored slightly as he sat on a chair next to Naruto's bed. About 3 days after the invasion, Orochimaru had arrived back in Uzushio with Naruto unconscious. It was not a great surprise since Naruto had warned them of the possibility before the start of the 3rd exam, but it still worried the children, as he called Zetsu and Kurama. Talbot was tasked with calming them down so they wouldn't go on a rampage. Today marked the week since the mock invasion of Konoha, and with each day of that week passed, the harder it had become for Talbot to calm down the children and the worrying populace after the blonde's absence. Naruto softly groaned simultaneously to Talbot's sudden lurch from slumber. Talbot almost gave himself whiplash with how fast he turned his head towards Naruto with a frown and a furrow of the eyebrows on what could have been a glare if not for the bandage surrounding Talbot's eyes. Was that really necessary? Talbot gritted out. Naruto tilted his head to the side before he came to a conclusion and grinned. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. It's not as if I was planning on waking you up by shouting, of course. I just woke up. He grinned at the annoyed Talbot. With a sigh, Talbot got comfortable once again in his seat before he addressed the blonde. Did everything turn out well? Of course. Did you think I wouldn't be able to handle a wayward seal on my own? Naruto said, shooting an amused look at the old man. Oh, I didn't doubt you on that. I mostly ask on what happened before that since we got some problems on our hands while you slept soundly. Talbot countered with a dark smile. There was trouble? What happened? Are the others all right? Did you handle it? Naruto quickly threw out the questions. Talbot held up a hand to try and stop the barrage of questions. When Naruto stopped and took a breath, Talbot spoke. After you finished your fight with Sarutobi, Orochimaru extracted you when the barrier fell after you summoned the pads back to the island. You fell unconscious soon afterwards and have been in that state for about a week. A week? Naruto asked with slight shock and adopted a thinking pose. I didn't stay such a long time inside my mindscape, so the absorption of the seal might have caused a sort of time dilation. Anyway, carry on. Naruto said, slightly embarrassed at the way Talbot leaned back waiting for him to finish. As I was saying before being so rudely interrupted, Talbot coughed. Where was I? Oh yes. The first few days were fine, but as time went on the children started to get worried and antsy. Thus it befell on poor old me to keep them from doing anything reckless. Naruto nodded as he knew that sometimes Kurama and Zetsu were a handful even if they were technically adults. It was a slight annoyance but nothing that couldn't be handled. However, when I finally had the chance to take a breather, I noticed the disappearance of 2 shinobi from the Uzu team we sent to the exams, Haku and Shin. Kurama has gone back to look for them but has not returned yet. Talbot paused here and Naruto motioned him to continue talking. A day after Kurama left, our Uzu forces deserted back to Route. I figured you were recalling them to Konoha until they almost burned down the port and the barrier was brought down. Wait. Naruto rudely interrupted. Let me properly check on the links. I have to verify this. I fear that the time dilation earlier could have been the cause of this and I don't want worse problems popping up later. Talbot twitched at being interrupted again but didn't comment. He waited as Naruto closed his eyes and placed his hands as if in prayer. Minutes later, Naruto gave a deep sigh and opened his eyes. Well, Danzo is a piece out of our control for now, Naruto said before rubbing his temples. I take it the link was damaged? Talbot asked with blatant curiosity. The workings of the Rakudo Juinjutsu were as complex as they were simple. Actually it was eroded, might have been the work of that wayward seal before I got to it. Naruto mumbled the last part with slight anger. Talbot contemplated. Any other links that might be damaged? Nagato and Conan's links were eroded as well, but since I hadn't activated their seals it won't really cause any problems. The only slight annoyance will be Danzo and how he will act from now on. I wouldn't call him a slight annoyance. Didn't you say he holds grudges? Talbot asked. Ha. That's true, but I wouldn't worry much about it. He'd place Konoha as his priority. If not, I don't know him that well. Naruto smiled at Talbot. I hope you're right, Naruto. Because I'm not dealing with that mess. Talbot pouted before standing up. Oh, Orochimaru went to look for Tsunade. He told me to tell you to join him when you woke up. He mentioned something about measuring Kabuto's medical techniques and something about a crystal. Talbot notified the young boy, waving his hand in dismissal before leaving the room. I should go, but I don't think I can move. Ha, Naruto sighed. I guess that's the price for good luck. Uzu no Kuni, Shimmer City, Hotel Swirl, Shizune. I'm going to the casino. A somewhat young woman with blonde hair and honey-colored eyes bellowed before closing the door with a bang. It's too early, Tsunade. Sama, come back, a younger woman with black hair shouted before sighing. Konohagakure, alleyway. 2 hours earlier Kurama watched from the shadows of an alley as Root members ran rampant throughout the village. He scoffed at their puny attempts to patrol and find any spies within the village. The redhead hummed and concentrated on his surroundings before grinning wildly and dashing towards the village gates. I didn't find Shin and Haku, but I can at least make this trip worthwhile, he thought devilishly. Road. 2 hours later Kurama watched from the foliage of a tree down the road as Jiraiya instructed Kunato on what appeared to be the first steps of the Rasengan. Tisk, how boring, Kurama thought. A sudden glow coming from his pacifier almost blew his cover. He quickly leaned back deeper into the leaves when he saw Jiraiya turn to look from the corner of his eye. Kurama looked down at his pacifier and smiled, knowing that Naruto had awakened. Uzu no Kuni, Shimmer City, UXU headquarters, current time. The masked form of Hino walked out of the building in his normal attire consisting of a white mask with slitted eyeholes and his blue cloak with Uzu no Kuni's symbol that designated him as one of the 6 whirlpools under the daimyo. He turned to the right and walked down the main road, giving occasional nods of greeting to the people who he passed by and those that waved hello. To those passing by he seemed to be taking a casual stroll, but it was far from the truth, for when he stopped in front of a small ordinary tea shop. As he walked in he was cheerfully greeted by the old woman running the store. "Good morning, guard.san," the old woman said with a slight bow. "We are honored to receive you in this humble establishment." "Thank you," Hino replied, his voice slightly muffled by the mask. "I'll be waiting for someone here. Please send some green tea to my table." "Right away, guard.san," the old woman replied with a small smile before going to get the desired drink. Making his way to the farthest corner from the exit, Hino sat on the chair that will allow him to face the entrance. Some minutes later, the old lady delivered his tea and then returned to the back room. Not a minute later he shifted before taking a sip from the hot tea. "Take a seat instead of breathing down my neck, Orochimaru," Hino said with a displeased tone. "Kukuku, it's just so interesting to see you use the paths," Orochimaru spoke as he took a seat next to Hino. "And you don't let me study its workings." Orochimaru whined. At least to Hino it sounded like a whining child. "Where is your apprentice, by the way?" Hino questioned the snake Sanin. Orochimaru simply dismissed him. "Somewhere around, I told him to busy himself." Hino sighed. "Just keep him away from the citizens or I won't be happy, not at all," he warned with dark tone that made Orochimaru chuckle nervously. "Of course." "Did you find Tsunade yet?" Hino asked curiously. Not yet, but I think she will turn up soon. You have casinos here, so she won't be far after learning the island is open for anyone to come." Hino nodded. "Quite true, I still blame Hashirama for spoiling her. She wouldn't be running around sulking around if he hadn't spoiled her and taught her to gamble. I sometimes think she inherited his bad luck." Hino gave a hopeless sigh. He was just about to take another sip when 3 people walked in. He cleared his throat and inspected them. "Can I help you, Shinobi.san?" he asked as he saw their headbands with Kumogakure's symbol. He did not have to worry for Orochimaru being seen since he took the chance to leave before they even entered. The 3 Kumo shinobi looked around quickly before chuckling. We're just looking around, mister." Hino chuckled before standing up. "You may call me Hino. I am one of the daimyo's guard, one of the 6 whirlpools." The Kumo shinobi stiffened and started to back away slowly towards the exit. "No need to run, you are welcome as long as you behave and don't cause any trouble. Else you'll be forcefully removed, either protesting or in a body bag." Hino warned pleasantly before passing by them and exiting the shop, but not before leaving a few coins on the table for the old woman as payment for the tea. After Hino walked out, the 3 Kumo shinobi relaxed before taking a table near the door. The old lady soon came and greeted them before taking their others. As they waited for their tea, 2 shadows stood above one of the Kumo shinobi. "Excuse me, Shinobi.san," the shadowed person standing over the person asked. The other 2 Kumo shinobi had a better view of the person and turned pale from fright. The third looked above him and followed the example of his companions and stood absolutely still, not unlike prey under a hunter's stare. The man continued, seemingly not aware of their fright, as if it were a common occurrence. "We're looking for one Kunato Uzumaki, blonde hair, blue eyes, orange clothing. Have you seen him?" His red eyes bore into the frightful eyes of the Kumo.nin before all 3 of them screamed. The man raised an eyebrow in wonderment, as this was a new development, at least new compared to his old experiences. He was about to ask again before the Kumo.nin in front of him fainted, the other 2 using the opportunity to flee. "That was odd," the man commented as he took one of the vacant chairs, his companion taking the other. Giggling nearly made his eye twitch in irritation. The crow perched on his shoulder giving a caw as if vocalizing his displeasure. "Pray tell, what do you find so amusing, Kisame?" He noticed the Kumo.nin twitch and wondered if he was still unconscious or faking it, but dismissed it. "Ha ha ha ha." Hysterical laughter was his answer as the shark man pounded a fist on the table and almost fell out of his chair. This time irritation won and his eye did twitch. Unfortunately for the man, it was going to be first of many encounters he will share with various Kumo shinobi. Memorial, set in stone. Part 1, unknown location, unknown time. Death lingered upon the room where an old man laid upon pristine white sheets, his hands folded upon his lap as he leaned back into the various pillows behind him. His hair was long and white with 2 parts that curved upwards in a somewhat resemblance to horns. Ringed purple eyes looked forward unfocused as the man drifted in his thoughts. A knock from the door made his gaze shift to the entrance of the room. "Come in," the man said in a deep aged tone. Despite his age, his voice carried power. The door opened slowly as a young man with small round glasses walked gracefully into the room. His short silver hair complemented his features as dark eyes roamed the room. "Hello, stranger. Have you come to me for wisdom?" the aged man asked to the other. The young man shook his head. I have not come for wisdom but for you, the younger man said. I am sorry, but at my age I can't move as I used to, so I'll have to decline. The old man replied. If you tell me your situation, I could send my sons to help you in my place. The old man smiled. I am afraid you have misunderstood me, Senju-Chiha. The young man spoke. I have come because it is your end. The old man turned grim as he looked towards his younger visitor. Also, you are an assassin. You must know that many have tried but none have succeeded. I am living proof, of course. The younger man shook his head again with a slight smile on his face. You misunderstand me again. The time you have been waiting for will come in mere moments. I am merely here to misplace you in a way. The beginning of the sentence caused the old man's eyes to widen, but the rest caused his eyebrows to furrow in confusion. What do you mean by? A stabbing pain in his chest interrupted him before he felt a warmth flow through his body, taking the pain away. His attention fell into the younger man who stood near his bed, the room filled with a spectacle of colored flames which seemed to flow away from the young man. I will help ease your pain as you pass on. However, remember this, your body will be buried in a vault inside the main mountain that surrounds the village, hidden in the whirlpools. I bid you farewell, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, Rakudo Senin. Unknown location. Unknown time. A young teen stood solemnly among her relatives. They were yet again attending a funeral. Even though her family was not as big as the other ones, it hurt her to see the sad and crying faces of others. Even if the clan remained neutral in these warring times, a lot of other clans still tried to become more powerful by trying to take over their lands. The clan only fought to protect themselves, but even as every time they came out victorious, many lost their lives in the confrontations. She wanted to fight along with them, but the clan had forbidden all women from going into battles, not because of their gender but because of the dangers that may present themselves to them. A woman had more to fear in the battlefield besides death. Not that it stopped her wishes to help. If she couldn't help them in the battlefield, she will just help them after they came back. A lot of those who died had only done so because they didn't get medical help immediately. As the funeral finished and everyone went on their way, she noticed a flash of silver in the corner of her eye. Quickly turning to get a better view, she saw a flash of a young man with silver head turning down a road into the main street. No one seemed to notice him or his peculiar hair color, which made her curious as most of her clan members tended to have a shade of red as their hair color. She concluded she must be a foreigner, and that made her curiosity much stronger as he might know more about the going-ons outside the clan. While her thoughts were on the man, said man had turned a corner into between two tents. Kuso, she said as she ran after the man, but as she turned the same corner she saw a man, but not the one she was looking for. The man appeared to be sleeping or unconscious, so she moved to wake him up. However, a slight metallic scent hit her before she made contact with him, and she gasped as he saw that his left leg was missing and was bleeding fast. Throwing caution to the wind, she slapped the man on the face to wake him up before she took out a medical kit from her bag. The man groaned from the hit but otherwise remained unconscious. The woman got to work immediately on stopping the bleeding by applying a mixture that will also disinfect the wound to prevent it from becoming infected or something worse. Having finished with the first aid she could do at best, she sighed as she slapped him again and got no response. Giving another tired sigh, she went on to drag him back to her house. 20 years later, a red-haired woman looked upon the battlefield with a calculating look upon her eyes. Behind her were 4 women with similar hair color. All 5 of them wore a white cross on the right shoulder of their uniform. A sudden rustling from the right made them tense as an armored man ran out from the bushes behind them. The 4 women behind the calculative one quickly moved back, while the one left behind merely took out a bunch of needles from within her sleeves. The man gave a shout before giving a downward slash aimed at her head. The woman narrowed her eyes at the man as she dodged to the left, the blade unluckily leaving a cut on her right arm. She winced in pain before sending the senbon flying towards her opponent's shoulder. However, the man was more adept than she gave him credit for and blocked the senbon with arm guards on his left arm. I've been told all your tricks, Uzumaki. Your head will fetch a high price from what I've heard. The man grinned with glee before rushing yet again to cut her down with a diagonal slash to the right. Expecting a dodge or block, he was completely shocked when she didn't do either and the blade cut into her skin, leaving a wide gash across her torso. Not a scream left her mouth, but as looked at her face he saw a fiery determination and the most evil smile upon her face before she struck a fresh batch of senbon into his skull. Chiyu. Sama. The 4 women shouted before they quickly approached the bleeding woman. A hand held up their concerned queries before a hissing sound was heard. Wisps of smoke seemed to surface from the edges of the wounds as they steadily grew smaller and smaller until not even a scar was left behind, only smooth flesh. Chiyu smiled softly at the 4. As you can see, I am perfectly fine, no need for worries. Another rustling made the 5 of them turn to the area where the man had come from. They tensed, waiting for another attack, but none came. taking another look at their surroundings. Chiyu almost failed to catch a glimpse of a man with silver hair before he disappeared. Shaking her head, she made note to add the strange sighting to her report. Let's go back home, dears. Tomorrow you'll be working to heal the warriors arriving while I go to the front lines. The women looked slightly disappointed but complied nonetheless. It will be on that day that her mother will recount the story of how she had met her father injured in an alleyway before she nursed him back to health. She never made the connection between the silver-haired man her mother met to the one she met in the forest that day. After being told to wait and lie low, the group of young teenagers returned to the Leaf Village and left the Hokage's office. Thus, they departed the Hokage's building one by one. Ino then rushed forward, jumped on Shikamaru's back, and gave him a firm squeeze as soon as he left the door. Once more, everyone merely gazed at him. She rubbed her face against his back and said, "Come on, Shikamaru. Let's go and have a couple's date, then we can plan our wedding." Shikamaru blushed red and stammered in response. "Don't you think it's a bit early to be thinking about marriage?" Kiba responded. As she embraced Shikamaru more tightly, Ino retorted, "When two hearts like ours meet, they're bonded forever and ever." Kiba and Neji exchanged a frustrated glance with one another. Then Ino turned and started to leave, pulling Shikamaru with him. After that, everyone watched as the scene developed. "So it looks like we'll be waiting around here for a while," said Choji. "Perhaps it would be best for us to get some downtime." Naruto placed his hands on the back of his head and grinned, saying, "That's fine by me." Sakura, Ino, and Tenten watched the boys chatting among themselves. Their hearts were freed from the tedium they experienced while they were away. Now that they were back, anything was now possible because Ino had acquired Shikamaru. They would need to take action if they wanted their man. Tenten approached them while maintaining eye contact with Neji and said, "You know, a lot changed from what you remember. Perhaps I could show you around." Choji said, "Sounds like a good idea to me. We'll—" But Tenten interrupted him by grabbing Neji's hand. Then she escorted him out. Everything happened so quickly that they were all powerless to stop it. Sakura came up to Naruto at that moment. He turned to face her as she said, "Naruto." Her head was down as he said, "Could you come with me? I'd like to talk to you about something." Naruto said, "Sure Sakura, anything." Sakura looked over at the wary glares of Kiba, Choji, and Hinata and said, "Not here. Follow me." Naruto then followed her as she turned and started to walk. Though Sakura was quicker on the draw than Hinata, Hinata had now lost her opportunity to ask Naruto if he wanted to go get some ramen. She observed as Sakura and Naruto left. But then Kiba came up to Hinata. "Hey Hinata," he said, waking her from her reverie of Naruto, and she turned to face her old teammate. "I was wondering," he started, "if you wouldn't mind showing me around the village." Hinata turned back to Kiba after glancing at Naruto as he vanished into the distance. She replied, "Sure Kiba." Kiba was thrilled to learn that he would try to woo Hinata and continue where he left off. Kiba then followed Hinata as she turned. As he thrashed his arms, Choji questioned, "But what about me?" Kiba turned to face him and gave him a similar shrug before continuing to follow Hinata. The last of Choji's friends then left, picking a girl over him, leaving him alone. "Bastards." Choji grinned and muttered. Sasuke, meanwhile, was navigating the forest at that moment. He was tethered to a homebound mission, just like the Retrieval squad. After navigating through trees and bushes, Sasuke arrived at a hill. After that, he paused and glanced down. He could make out the Leaf Village in the distance. He looked down at his former house, where he had last seen his former teammate Naruto, and the battle they had fought. Since then, however, Sasuke had grown and changed. After taking a deep breath, Sasuke started to descend the hill. Back in the village in the meantime, Naruto was led by Sakura to the village gates. Sakura then came to a halt and stood there while Naruto walked behind her and others passed by. She faced away from him as she stood there. She said, "Do you know where we are?" "Yay," replied Naruto. "We're at the village gates. The way in and out of the village." "This is where I asked you to promise to bring Sasuke back," she replied. She sniffled and raised her head back, saying, "Looking back, I realize I put too much pressure on you and not so much on myself. I was angry and confused then, so for any pain I put you through." She then turned to Naruto, tears streaming down her cheeks, and said, "Naruto, I'm sorry." At that moment, Naruto extended his arms and encircled Sakura. Sakura kept sobbing and buried her head in Naruto's shoulder as he grinned and said, "There's no need for forgiveness, you didn't sow anything." "Yes, it's all my fault," she said. "I drove him away, and I drove you away." After taking a moment to distance himself, Naruto turned to face her and remarked, "I think you flatter yourself a little too much." For a brief moment, Sakura stopped her tears by saying, "This stopped being about you a long time ago. Sasuke made his decision and I made mine." Sakura questioned, "Are you still going to kill him?" Naruto stopped talking and looked at her gravely. Sakura started crying once more and said, "Naruto, please don't." "Like I said," he replied. "He made his decision, I made mine. These are the paths we walk now." Sakura threw herself at Naruto and clung to his shirt, pleading, "But Naruto, please. Do it for me. We're friends after all." Naruto inhaled deeply, then shrugged his shoulders, and Sakura's hands slid off him. Sakura was left alone when Naruto turned and started to leave. The person Sakura was in love with at the time was getting closer and closer to the village. Kiba and Hinata in the interim. The two strolled through the streets of the village. Kiba is next to Akamaru. "So Hinata," began Kiba, "what's changed here? Tell me everything." "Well, nothing's changed much," Hinata said, stuttering slightly. Kiba leapt out in front of her and started to bounce around, saying, "Come on, something had to change. I don't remember all these buildings being here." Kiba stopped bouncing around here after Hinata said, "They've always been here. What's really changed is you." "Me?" Kiba asked, grinning mischievously. Then he turned to face her and asked, "How me?" Told Hinata, "Well, you're taller, bigger." At the compliments, Kiba carried himself with pride. "And you don't look like a kid anymore," she concluded. Kiba questioned, "What are you saying? You look more handsome." Kiba asked himself. "I told Hinata, rugged," and Kiba dropped a little bit as a result. The final and most crucial component he was hoping for was not what he wanted, but the compliances got off to a good start. As Hinata kept walking, Kiba took his place and stood back. "Kiba, are you coming?" she asked, turning to face him after realizing he wasn't following. He replied, "Yes, I'm coming." Then, with Akamaru by his side, he followed her. On the walls of the village, in the meantime, two leaf ninjas were patrolling the area. Since nothing seemed unusual, they continued. Sasuke then scaled the wall and entered the village after they had passed. Neji and Tenten were at Ichiraku Ramen in the meantime. Two steaming bowls of ramen were set out in front of the two at that moment. "What's new about this?" asked Neji. "This isn't anything new to me." Tenten dipped her spoon in the bowl and said, "One just thought you'd like a taste of the good old days. Back when we were kids." She then turned to face him. Neji said icily, "I haven't been a kid for a long time." Averting her head from him, Tenten proceeded to eat her ramen. After a few moments, she said, "Neji, there's something I've been meaning to tell you." Neji turned to face her, and she replied, "Something I've been meaning to tell you for a long time." However, Neji stopped her by raising his hand. "If we're on the topic," he said, "I'd like to go first." Tenten said, "Okay." Neji cleared his throat after taking a long sigh. The butterflies in Tenten's stomach danced as she said, "Tenten, you've been my teammate for years now, always looking after and caring for me when I needed it. And although I never said it, I was always thankful. I was too blinded by my pride that I could never see it, and I didn't realize it until it was gone." Tenten had been waiting years for this moment. Neji then cupped Tenten's face in his hand and said, "I'm just trying to say that." At that moment, there was an explosion in the village square, and the air was filled with smoke and fire. All of the onlookers, including Tenten and Neji, watched in horror. At that moment, Neji leapt from his chair and seized Tenten's wrist. Tenten blushed slightly despite the situation, but Neji was never one for such physical contact. As he put it, "Come on, let's go check it out." The two then made their way to the village square. Sasuke was in the village square and headed toward devastation. He was shooting his Chidori blast at the buildings he passed as he went about. The onlookers rushed past in a state of frantic horror. Sasuke blew up another building while looking to his right. Smoke and flames spread throughout the structure. Sasuke had a sly smile on his face and was having a great time. Neji and Tenten showed up at that moment. Tenten pointed to a figure in front of a smoking building and said, "Look." Neji turned to see him and asked, "Is that Sasuke?" The target of his and his four allies' hatred, he was now overcome with a wave of rage and anger. Tenten glanced over at Neji with concern as he said, "Tenten, get to safety." But Neji, he commanded, "Do as I say. It's not safe here, and it's about to get a lot worse." Neji then moved forward, in Sasuke's direction. When Sasuke noticed a big man in white robes coming toward him, his attention was captured. He was unable to identify the person at first, but after closely examining the character, he surmised that it was Neji. Sasuke turned and asked, "Neji Hyuga?" Neji stopped walking and replied, "Sasuke Uchiha." Sasuke said, "So it is you. I barely recognized you." Well, it's me and I'm real. Sasuke asked sarcastically, what are you doing? Come to stop me and save the day. Neji said, no, I'm here to kill you. How dark, and how do you plan to do so? I'm going to beat you to a bloody pulp. Sadly, the other won't get their chance at you. Boo.Who. Sasuke exclaimed. After that, the two silently stood there examining one another. I remember that you were the top genin of your class, Sasuke said, resting his hand on his sword. That's right. Neji said. I guess now we'll see who's truly better. Sasuke expressed his opinion. Sasol snatched up his sword, and Neji merely clenched his fist. Everything then picked up speed as Neji activated his Byakugan and Sasuke drew his sword before the two charged at one another. The conflict had begun. Neji ducked as Sasuke lunged forward and swung his sword, then Neji dodged once more as Sasuke swung. At that moment, Neji leapt to his feet and gave Sasuke a chest kick. Sasuke staggered backwards. Neji then lunged forward and kicked, but Sasuke used his arm to block. After that, Sasuke punched, but Neji blocked. Neji then seized Sasuke's arm, leapt to his feet, and kicked him in the face. Sasuke landed on the ground again. At that moment, Neji took two knives out of his ninja pouch and hurled them at Sasuke. Sasuke sprang to his feet, then leapt aside as soon as he saw the knives approaching. He just about made it, though. One knife he avoided, but the other sliced his leg. After that, Sasuke got up and examined his bleeding leg. He then turned to face Neji. Sasuke, furious, swung his arm forward and fired a blast of Chidori. Neji shot back an air palm in response. When the two attacks collided, one of them exploded. Then, through the smoke, the two adversaries rushed at one another and resumed their battle. Neji ducked as Sasuke lunged forward and swung his sword. Neji then kneed Sasuke in the stomach after punching him in the face. Sasuke then struck Neji in the chin. Sasuke then raised his Chidori and leaned back. Neji, however, swung his arm forward and threw him another air palm. Sasuke was flung back and into a brick wall by the blast. Sasuke started to stir and stand up after a short while. Neji retreated and held his ground as Sasuke leaned over and started to charge up his Chidori. At that moment, Sasuke's Chidori was fully charged, crackling and glowing blue. Next, Sasuke rushed toward Neji. Sasuke then leapt into the air and dove down at Neji as soon as he was close enough. However, Neji started spinning after completing the 8 trigrams rotation. Sasuke's Chidori and his rotation clashed. Both fighters were flung across the battlefield when there was an unexpected second explosion. Sasuke flew into a garbage can while Neji slid across the ground. Tenten observed the battle from the sidelines and shared her thoughts on it. Sasuke was the worse of the two, but they both appeared to be quite battered now. Neji had only minor cuts and was covered in dust. Sasuke was bloodied and bruised. He would probably lose if he continued to fight Neji. Therefore, he would need to come up with a quick plan if he wanted to win. The first to get back on his feet was Neji. Sasuke slowly got back up, holding his side, but Neji was on him when he looked up. He was standing in his trademark position for his 64 palm trigrams. Then Neji launched his ultimate attack, hitting Sasuke one after the other. Neji struck him in every part of his body. When it came time for the last blow, Neji struck Sasuke in the forehead. Deflated, Sasuke collapsed back to the ground. He reclined on his stomach with his back to Neji. Then Neji stood there with a sense of victory. After wiping his mouth, he approached Sasuke's corpse. Sasuke then abruptly came to life, leapt to his feet, and slashed Neji across the face with his sword. Neji collapsed back to the ground, blood streaming from his chest. Then Sasuke stood over him and a pool of blood surrounded him. Tenten rushed to the side of the battered Neji right away. His blood dripped all over her as she rushed up and held his head in her arms. With a hand covered in blood, Neji reached up and grasped her arm. Tenten then started shedding tears on Neji's face. Then Neji's breathing became labored and his eyes rolled to the back of his head. Sasuke turned and started to leave as this was happening. Before he encountered any more issues, he intended to leave the village. However, Destiny had other ideas. Because Naruto, Kiba, Hinata, Shikamaru, and Choji all showed up at that moment. They all turned to see the smoke and the mayhem outside. Then they noticed Tenten nearby and a fallen figure. Then they noticed Sasuke leaving. At the same time, they all had the same thought. The first people inside were Akamaru and Kiba. With a ferocious cry of war, Kiba charged at Sasuke. Sasuke was completely unprepared. After running up and jumping on Sasuke, Akamaru bit his arm. Then Sasuke threw Akamaru away with a swing of his arm. However, Kiba struck Sasuke in the face and then repeatedly in the stomach as he turned around. Shikamaru and Choji were en route to the battle at that point, but they passed Tenten en route. "Guys!" she exclaimed. She was holding the bloody Neji on the ground when the two turned to look back. They then turned around and went to the side of their fallen comrades. Once more, Kiba struck Sasuke in the face. "Kiba!" Shikamaru's voice called out. Shikamaru and Choji were lying on the ground beside Tenten when Kiba turned around. Kiba rushed to them after losing interest in Sasuke. The three were huddled around Neji when he arrived. Additionally, they were attempting to halt the hemorrhage in his chest. As he applied pressure to the wound, Choji said, "Apply pressure." But no matter what they did, the blood continued to flow. Then Ino arrived, though. Shikamaru said, "Ino, help him." Ino hurried to Neji's side, and while the three boys moved aside, Tenten remained by his side, holding his head. Ino then placed her hands over Neji's chest and started doing medical ninjutsu on him. Sasuke thought this was his opportunity to quickly flee, but when he turned around, he saw Naruto, the final member of the Retrieval squad, standing there. Sasuke continued to speak confidently, "Well, look who it is." Naruto simply turned to face him and said, "Your friends are dying back there. Perhaps you should go help him." Naruto said, "He's got all the help he needs, he understands." He then carefully withdrew a knife and grasped it. Sasuke was aware that he would have to think dirty once more if he wanted to survive another battle. After that, Naruto dashed forward with his knife, but someone or something stood in his way. Sakura used her body as a shield to stand in front of Sasuke, and when he saw her, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks. Sasuke had never been happier in his life to see her. Sakura said, Don't hurt him." Naruto said, "Sakura, get out of the way." Sakura said, "I can't." Sasuke stepped back, "I won't let you hurt him." Naruto grimaced at Sasuke, who put his hand on Sakura's shoulder and said, "It won't work, Sakura. He's after my head." Sakura said, "He won't hurt you, not while I'm here." Sasuke then gave Naruto a menacing grin. Sasuke said, "Then I'll be on my way." He turned and started to leave slowly, but after a few steps he turned to face them again and said, "You know I enjoyed this reunion. What do you say we do it again?" he asked. He looked at Neji and said, "I'll bring my team and you bring yours." "What'll I need?" "A 5-man team." "No, a 4-man team." After becoming enraged, Naruto shoved Sakura away and charged Sasuke, but Sasuke vanished and left in an instant. Shikamaru's voice interrupted Naruto's repressed anger as he stood in his absence. Sakura and Naruto turned to face him as he called, "Naruto. We're moving Neji to the hospital." The rest of the group followed after Kiba picked Neji up and carried him over his shoulder before taking off. Sakura stood exactly as she had when she was defending Sasuke, so Naruto glanced at her before turning his head and following the group to the hospital, leaving Sakura alone. Afterwards, the group gathered in the hospital hallway and waited anxiously while Tsunade and Ino operated on Neji in the emergency room. The bench was occupied by Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji. Shikamaru sat there twiddling his thumbs, just as he had done 3 years ago after the Sasuke mission. Tenten sat on the bench with her head hung low, hands covering her eyes. Hinata was also present, standing nearby, and Kiba paced back and forth from wall to wall, with Akamaru following him every step of the way. At that moment, everyone turned to watch Sakura walking toward the group as the sound of tiny feet thumping on the floor became louder. When Naruto saw her, he instantly shook his head and dropped his eyes. The others would follow suit gradually, though Sakura and Naruto briefly exchanged looks before Naruto turned away, and then she slowly made her way to the group. When she did, Sakura approached Naruto and stood over him, but no one bothered to look at her. She said, "Naruto. I'm sorry." Everyone turned to look at her, attracting their attention. "I apologize." "Sorry for what?" Naruto inquired in a tone of voice. He then got to his feet and turned to face her. "Are you sorry that you got in my way, that he left you again, or that my friends are in the hospital?" "You what?" spoke up Kiba as he walked over to them. "I couldn't let you hurt him," said Sakura. "How dare you?" yelled Kiba as he strutted forward, pushing Naruto aside and stood before Sakura clenching his fist. Just then Shikamaru jumped up and stood between them, holding Kiba back with his left hand. "Kiba, there's nothing we can do about it now," said Shikamaru. "We've just gotta make the best of the situation we're in now." "And what is the best thing to do right now?" yelled Kiba as he flailed his arms around. Then he turned around and with a great yell he punched the wall, afterwards leaving a big dent in it. "Kiba, calm down," said Hinata. Kiba then looked over to her, then after doing so took a deep breath and then sat back down in his seat. Akamaru then walked over and sat down by his master. So what do we do now? Choji inquired. Sasuke said he'd be getting a team together to fight us, said Naruto. If Neji gets out of the hospital we'll. If, interrupted Hinata. Everyone noticed that Tenten jumped at the sound of the words. Shikamaru and Choji turned to Naruto with nervous glares. What do you mean if, she said. When he gets out, corrected Naruto. We'll go out and face him. What'll you do then? Asked Sakura. What we've been meaning to do the whole time, said Kiba. Sakura then covered up her face then ran off. For a moment Naruto wanted to hold out his hand and comfort her, but then the reality of her set in. Things could never be between them and he knew that now. Silence fell upon the group now. You know, said Tenten speaking up finally. Everyone turned to her as she lifted her head, tears still in her eyes. Neji was about to tell me something really important, but was interrupted when Sasuke showed up. Do any of you know what he might have said? Neji's 4 comrades looked at each other, then Choji spoke up. Well, he said scratching his head, Naruto, Shikamaru and Kiba. There's no real easy way to say it so I'm just gonna say it. Choji then took another minute to scratch his head and then he cleared his throat. He's very fond of you. He always has been. Tenten lit up at that comment. You know all the time you've spent together he's greatly enjoyed and. But then he was interrupted at the sound of the door opening behind them. Everyone turned as Suande and Ino walked out. What's the word? Asked Naruto as they stepped out. It took a while, said Tsunade, but we were able to save him from a life-threatening situation. He's in a stable condition now. Can we see him? Asked Tenten. Yes, said Ino. Just be gentle but Tenten didn't wait as she ran past Ino and into the room where Neji was. Just then Shikamaru, Naruto, and Kiba approached Choji. When did Neji ever say any of that? Asked Shikamaru as he put his hand on Choji's shoulder. Choji cracked a small smile and with a chuckle answered, never. Then the group went forward and walked into the room. Kiba went over to Hinata. Come on, he said putting his arm around her. Let's go see how your cousin's doing. Then they all walked in. When they did, they walked in and found Tenten with her arms wrapped around Neji's face, and she held their faces close together. Looks like it worked out for the better, whispered Choji to Shikamaru. Then Tenten released Neji and he fell back onto his bed. Meanwhile in the Sound Village, Sasuke stood before Orochimaru once again. So how did your mission go? Orochimaru asked with a hiss. I laid waste to a few buildings and killed a leaf ninja, told Sasuke. Only one? Asked Orochimaru. He was the only one who dared get in my way, told Sasuke. Orochimaru still looked uninterested by the fact. It was one of the ninja who tried to bring me back to the Leaf Village a few years back. Oh? Asked Orochimaru. Yes, told Sasuke. Then after I took care of him the other ninja who were also on that mission came to his aid. And they beat you? Orochimaru inquired. No, replied Sasuke. The 4 of them are out to get me. It's so surprised so I decided to make it more interesting. I challenged the remaining 4 to a fight. I told them I'd get my own team together and that we'll duke it out once I return. Oh, I love that idea. Orochimaru laughed and said, you're a ninja after my own heart. Sasuke said, all I need is a team. Orochimaru rubbed his chin with his hand. I think I have just the people, said Orochimaru with a snap of his fingers. Then Orochimaru stood up and walked over to Sasuke. I will get you your team, and then with my army we will set out in force and attack the Leaf Village. Meanwhile back at the Leaf Village. So that's the plan? Asked Neji as he sat up. Everyone had just clued him in on what had happened since his being hospitalized. The most important fact was of Sasuke creating a team in order to fight them. That's pretty much it, said Naruto. Well, just think of it like this, said Shikamaru. Sasuke thinks that Neji's dead so he'll only have a 4-member team, but since Neji's not dead we'll have the advantage 5-4. 6-4. Corrected Kiba. Then Akamaru let out a loud bark. Right, said Shikamaru. 6-4. I like those odds, said Choji. Yay, said Neji as he sat up more. The only question is, will I be ready to fight when the time comes? The most dangerous part has passed, said Ino. You should make a full recovery if you take it easy for the next few days. Good, said Neji as he now slid down into his bed. Well, if that's the case we'll leave you for now, said Shikamaru, and let you get some rest. Then one by one they all began to funnel out of the room. Kiba was the last one out. He turned and prepared to shut the door behind him. He turned and looked into the room. There he saw Neji laying in his bed with Tenten right beside him. his arm wrapped around her. Then Kiba shut the door. Then he looked to his left and saw the retreating figure of Hinata disappearing down the hall. Then he remembered something, the way he felt about her. And in the past few days he's been so caught up in the chaos that he'd somewhat forgotten about it. So now he was determined to figure out how she felt about him, but he would have to be sneaky and clever about it. For now, said Shikamaru as the four boys stood outside Neji's door, we'll wait. Just then Ino came over and flung herself onto Shikamaru's arm and then rubbed her head onto his shoulder. Shikamaru took his other hand and nestled her head with a smile on his face. But then he looked up at the judging looks of his friends. To Kiba this was just another reminder of how he had to get back on track with Hinata. Shikamaru then cleared his throat and said, "Until our next meeting, gentlemen." He and Ino then turned and went their separate ways. The group then started to slowly disperse, with Choji and Naruto walking away. However, Kiba stopped Naruto by putting his hand on his shoulder. As he did, Kiba uttered, "Naruto." Naruto turned to him and said, "Yay. What is it?" "I need a favor." "A favor? What kind of favor?" Naruto asked, turning to face Kiba. Then, in a stealthy manner, Kiba scanned the area. No one was nearby, and everyone else had vanished down the corridor. Then Kiba leaned in and whispered, "Talk to Hinata for me. I need you to." Kiba started. Raising an eyebrow, Naruto said, "Talk to her." He said, "I don't see the point, why don't you?" Kiba nodded in response. "Because it can't be me," replied Kiba. "It has to be someone else so I can find out the truth." The reality? A tiny smile appeared on Naruto's face as he asked, "Ah, this old thing?" asked Naruto as he crossed his arms. Kiba grimaced slightly at his friends mocking of him. "Look Kiba," continued Naruto. "I don't know if this'll work out, last we knew she had a thing for me and—" "Look," said Kiba. "I'm not asking for much." Then he reached out and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder again. "And you're the person I trust the most in this case." "Me?" asked Naruto. "Why me? Because you know what it's like to lose someone you love," replied Kiba. Naruto perked himself up and took a deep sigh. "Very well," said Naruto. "I will help you out." "Thanks Naruto," said Kiba. Akamaru barked, then jumped up and licked Naruto's face. "You won't regret this. Say, how about I go put in a good word for you with Sakura?" "No," replied Naruto. "That ship has run its course, it's time for me to move on." "But she won't move on, she still hasn't," said Kiba. "Then I'll just be the adult here and move on," told Naruto. Then he walked past Kiba in the same direction Hinata went. "I'll do the best I can with Hinata," he said. "That's more than I could ever ask for," said Kiba. Then he too began walking. Naruto turned the corner and just at the end of the hallway he saw Hinata. "Hinata," he called. "Wait up." Then Naruto ran forward to catch up with her. Naruto," said Hinata. "Hey Hinata," said Naruto. "I was wondering if you'd like to go get some ramen with me." Hinata then turned a bright red. Aye, she stuttered. "I take that as a yes," said Naruto. Hinata nodded her head. Then Naruto grabbed her hand and pulled her along. This was like a dream come true for Hinata. Naruto had asked her out on a date. So perhaps now was the time for her to confess herself. Kiba made his way down the hall and then turned the corner. "So where are you going?" asked a voice. Kiba turned to see Choji standing there leaning against the wall. "Home," said Kiba. "Naruto's doing you a favor and you're just going to sit back and do nothing in return?" "He said he didn't want me to. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it anyway," said Choji. "Alright then," said Kiba, "let's go." Meanwhile Naruto and Hinata had made their way to Ichiraku Ramen and were now being served their food. Hinata began eating her food as Naruto sat next to her strumming his fingers. Whatever he was going to do he would have to be sly about it. He didn't want to make it sound too obvious as to what he was trying to do. "So Hinata," Naruto began. Hinata slurped up her ramen and then turned to him. "How does it feel having everyone back?" "It's wonderful," replied Hinata. "It's good to see everyone again." "Yes, I'm sure you missed us all right?" asked Naruto. Hinata blushed slightly. "Why? Yes," was her response. "Your friends are back, your cousin's back, old teammate," Naruto replied. Hinata gave a head nod. Naruto then turned and began to eat some of his ramen. So far, everything is going well. Now, let's go for the throat, he thought. Naruto raised his head and said, "Say, what do you think of Kiba anyway?" Hinata fell silent for a while. Meanwhile, Kiba and Choji were searching for Sakura in another part of town. They looked in every restaurant, hospital, and even her house, but they were still unable to locate her. Kiba glanced over when Choji pointed out a person in the crowd. Someone with recognizable pink hair was walking ahead of them by about 20 feet, and since there was only one person that could be that person, Kiba and Choji hurried to catch up with them. She hadn't noticed them yet, so they continued walking until they reached a small alley, at which point they both moved to walk on opposite sides of her. That was as close as Choji and Kiba could get because they wanted this to be more private. Abruptly, Kiba placed his hands on her shoulders and moved ahead of her. At that moment, Sakura kicked up her leg and kicked Kiba in the groin. "Oh." Kiba moaned as he leaned over to support himself. "We'd like to have a talk with you," he said. Sakura kept walking after that, but Choji grabbed her and dragged her into the alley with Kiba. As he held her against the wall, Choji said, "Don't try any of that again. We just want to talk, okay?" Sakura nodded her head but said nothing. Choji then turned to Kiba and asked, "Are you okay?" he inquired. Kiba approached slowly, breathing heavily and perspiring. He said, yes, I'm good." Kiba and Choji then turned to Sakura. "What topic would you like to discuss?" she inquired. In the meantime, Naruto and Hinata are back at Ichiraku's ramen. "How do I feel about Kiba?" "Well, he's always been a good friend, and he's always watched out for me," Hinata said, and Naruto nodded his head in agreement. Naruto said, huh. Go on," told Hinata, "and I guess I do like him a lot." "Are you in love with him?" Naruto raised an eyebrow in question. Hinata blushed and said, No, I mean, I don't love him that way. I love him like a brother," she said nervously. It wasn't the response Naruto was expecting. "Do you think?" Naruto started. "Is there any chance that you could love him differently?" "You're referring to Shikamaru and Ino's romantic relationship?" Hinata asked, and Naruto nodded his head. "No, I don't think I could," she said, adding that he had changed since our childhood. It was frightening how he behaved when he was fighting. I mean, he resembles an untamed animal. A chill went through Naruto, wondering how he would explain to Kiba, the girl he loves, that he believes he is a monster. Then Hinata turned to Naruto and said, Naruto, I love you," she continued, "But, there is someone I love." She then leaned closer to him, but Naruto leaned away from her. Naruto apologized, but he said, "But I can't." "Why?" Hinata inquired. "I don't love you like that," Naruto replied, "but more importantly, I could never betray Kiba like that." Kiba, what's he got to do with this?" Hinata asked. "He loves you," replied Naruto, "and he asked me to come here and ask how you felt about him." "Does Kiba love me?" With a hand on her chest, Hinata posed the question. Naruto answered, "Yes." Hinata remained silent, so Naruto took that as permission to go. He got up and started to leave, but not before turning to face her. He said, "I'm so sorry," and turned to go. Sakura, Kiba, and Choji in the meantime. "What are you looking for from me?" Sakura inquired. Choji said, "We just want to talk." "How about?" Sakura inquired. Sakura felt a sharpness as Kiba said, "You, Naruto, and this Sasuke business." Sakura said, "That's none of your business, is it? Why do you care so much about Sasuke?" Choji said, "Since it concerns Naruto, it is." Sakura replied, "He's everything I ever wanted." Kiba said, "He's everything you can't have." Sakura retorted angrily, "But I could never expect someone like you to understand love. You don't know that." After taking a deep breath, Kiba sagged in his place and said, "Actually." Sakura was shocked because this was the only time she had ever heard him speak calmly. "I do." Sakura and Kiba then looked at each other. Sakura kept staring at Kiba, but Choji said, "We're just being realistic." "With whom?" Sakura inquired. Sakura grinned as Kiba replied, "Hinata." She said, "You'd make a cute supple." Choji's eyes followed each of them as they conversed, depending on who was speaking. Kiba said, "I don't know if it could ever be." Sakura said, "Don't talk like that." "But do you see why we're worried about this case?" Referring back to the subject at hand, Kiba said, "We're just looking out for Naruto." Sakura said, "I don't see what he has to do with this." "Have you not noticed?" Choji inquired. "Realized what?" Sakura inquired. Kiba looked up at the sky and remarked, "He and I are a lot alike." "How?" Sakura inquired. Kiba said, "We're both in love with girls we can't have." Sakura then realized that Naruto had been in love with her the entire time. Choji said, "So now you finally understand." Speaking of the devil, Naruto was passing by at that moment. When he turned to see the three of them together, his first thought was that he needed to tell Kiba. After turning to face them, Naruto was finally noticed by the three, who then turned to face him. After a long moment of staring at one another, Naruto finally found the courage to speak up because Kiba had to know. "Kiba," Naruto said, "come here." Kiba hurried away from Choji and approached Naruto, and Sakura then approached Choji. "What's happening?" she questioned him. Kiba asked Naruto to interrogate Hinata for him. Choji told, and discover Hinata's feelings. Kiba went up to Naruto and stood in front of him. "So?" Kiba smiled and said, "What's the word?" Naruto gave Kiba a glum and anxious glance in return. "I won't lie to you, Kiba, although it may be hard for you to hear," Naruto replied. Kiba said, "I'll handle it." Sakura and Choji watched, able to see everything but too far away to read the words. The two of them were standing there when they noticed Naruto's mouth moving. Then, they noticed Kiba pacing back and forth while running his hand through his hair. First, Kiba bowed his knees and kept his hands on his head, then Naruto approached him from behind and put his arms around him, and finally, Kiba buried his head in Naruto's arm. Sakura quickly followed Choji as he left her side and went to his brethren, saying, "Oh shit." They could hear Kiba's sobbing growing louder as they got closer. After that, Sakura approached, and Choji knelt down and put his arms around Kiba's front. It was very touching to see the two friends embracing and consoling their wounded comrade, and then Sakura approached and joined the group. She dropped to her knees and placed her mouth against Kiba's ear. At that moment, the sound of sobbing and crying ceased, followed by a low grunt, and Kiba slowly stood up. "It'll be alright," she said, "you're gonna get through this." He said in a rough voice, "Get off of me." Naruto and Choji separated from Kiba and hurried away, and Kiba gave them a deadly look. Kiba then turned and started to leave. "Kiba, wait, where are?" Sakura asked, attempting to follow him before Choji grabbed her. Then Choji moved forward behind Kiba, saying, "Let's take care of this." "Kiba," he yelled, "where are you going?" Kiba replied, "None of your fucking business." "I understand that Kiba is angry," Choji said before deciding to take action. "Why don't you come with me and we'll talk about this?" Choji then reached out and took Kiba's arm. Then Kiba acted without warning, turning around, grabbing Shuai, lifting him up, and throwing him against a wall. Choji slammed into the wall, and Kiba stood there, observing the chaos he had created, before moving on. Sakura and Naruto hurried over to Choji. "How are you doing, Choji?" As he assisted him in standing up, Naruto asked. Choji rubbed his neck and said, "Oh, that was a dirty trick." "What was the purpose of that?" Sakura inquired. "He's upset," said Naruto, "and when he's upset Kiba usually gets angry." Sakura said, "But still that's no reason for him to do that." Choji said, "I don't blame him. He's just going through a difficult time. We'll let this situation work itself out and give him some space." Sakura, however, was not persuaded and believed she had a duty to fulfill. She strode off on her own mission, away from Naruto and Choji. After she left, Naruto said, "Great, now she's pissed." Sakura, meanwhile, wandered around in search of a specific person, more specifically, a female Hyuga. Sakura quickly figured out that she would be at the training grounds, and she was correct. Because Hinata was standing there, gazing up at the moon, in the center of the training fields. "Are you aware of your actions?" As Sakura approached from behind, Hinata turned to face her and asked. Sakura. What are you doing here?" she asked. "I've come to find you," said Sakura. "Do you know what you've done to Kiba?" "So Naruto relayed my words to Kiba?" Hinata inquired. "Yes, he did, and poor Kiba's had his heart broken," said Sakura. "How could you do that? Of all people, Hinata, I never would have suspected you." "Me? You have no right to judge me," Hinata said. "While you were smitten with Sasuke, you broke Naruto's heart." Sakura said, "That's different." Hinata responded, "No, it's exactly the same." At that moment, a loud, agonizing, irate scream broke up their conversation. Neji and Tenten heard it in the hospital, Ino and Shikamaru heard it, Choji and Naruto heard it, and they all knew who it was because it was so loud that it reverberated throughout the village. "Was that Akiba?" Hinata inquired. Sakura said, "Yes." In the distance, a lone figure sat atop a hill, his dog by his side, his silhouette against the moon. The drama from the previous night had subsided but was still in the air when the sun rose the following morning, and Kiba had simply risen and vanished, leaving no trace. At this point, Shikamaru, Naruto, and Choji gathered in the village square and, while they waited for Neji to arrive, Choji and Naruto informed Shikamaru of what had transpired. "So, what took place next?" Shikamaru inquired. At first he was broken down by it, told Naruto. He dropped to his knees, he was crying. Weeping? Then this must have really affected him, Shikamaru inquired. Then his mood suddenly changed. Told Choji. He got up and was extremely aggravated, ordered us off him, which he were fine with doing. So what took place? Shikamaru inquired. Still in his enraged daze, Naruto said, he turned and left. I tried to stop him, but he stopped and attacked me, said Choji. Threw me right into a wall. And now, where is he? Shikamaru inquired. He just wandered off, Naruto said. Don't know. However, we did hear him later. Shikamaru said. Yay, the whole village did. Neji and Tenten then came up to the three. Tenten spoke up before Neji could respond, saying, it's good to see you getting around fine. After saying, yay, she stood in front of the group and pointed a finger at them. Where's Kiba? I have a grudge against him for the noises he made last night. He woke me up from my beauty sleep. Neji arched an eyebrow as Naruto was informed. We don't know where he is. Where is he? Tenten inquired. Shikamaru said, missing. They just finished explaining to me what happened. So, what took place? Tenten inquired. It would be too troublesome to tell you the full story, so I'll sum it up, said Shikamaru. Heartbreak, loss, things of that nature. All of this occurred when? Neji stepped up and asked. Neji sighed as Choji said, about 10 o'clock last night. Tenten. He turned to face her and said, why don't you run along and grab a bite to eat while I take care of this? Tenten waved Neji away, saying, no, there's no way I'm missing something as big as this. Neji sighed and turned away from her. Shikamaru said, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. Neji looked at Tenten, who smiled triumphantly at him, and said, tell me about it. Now, he said, turning back to them, what's happened with Kiba? He had his heart broken and responded the only way he knows how, told Shikamaru. Who is the girl, then? Neji asked, and the three boys exchanged anxious looks with one another. They couldn't lie to Neji because he would know, but they also didn't want to involve Hinata because that would make the game completely different. Then Naruto took charge. He asked me to find out Hinata's feelings about him, he said. Thus, I took her to a ramen restaurant and... The three nodded as Neji interrupted him, saying, wait. The girl who broke Kiba's heart was Hinata. That doesn't sound like something Hinata would do, Tenten replied. Neji and Tenten watched in disbelief as Naruto said, well, believe me, I was here. Choji said, just carry on with the story. Right, said Naruto. Kiba wanted me to ask Hinata what she thought about him, so I took Hinata out to get some ramen in. You removed her? Neji inquired. Naruto said, yay. You cannot ask her about another guy after you've taken her out, Neji said. That's stupid, it's a mixed message. Naruto retorted, it's not like it was a date. Recalling the discussion he had with Naruto on the same subject a few years prior, Shikamaru grinned and said, sounds like a date to me. Naruto stammered, Well, but look, let's just return to the subject at hand. Neji said, all right. You removed Hinata, so what? I asked her what she thought about Kiba, and, Tenten inquired. I told her Kiba's side, and then I turned and went to find Kiba and tell him, Naruto said, adding, let's just say it wasn't too happy. He gave Choji an enigmatic look before saying, say, what were you doing with her anyway? I discovered him and Choji talking to Sakura a short while later. Choji started to perspire a little because Naruto didn't want any of them to speak to Sakura because he would have been upset if he had. Choji went on for Naruto, saying, then, he pulled Kiba aside and told him the news. How did he respond to it? Neji inquired. Told Choji, at first, okay. He was upset, crying about it. Weeping? Neji inquired. Tenten said, that doesn't sound like the Kiba I know. Shikamaru was informed, beyond all that toughness, he's actually very emotional. When did he lose his temper? Neji inquired. Shortly after, told Choji. He got up and left in a big hurry. Naruto informed Choji, who nodded in agreement. That's when he flipped Choji. He put his hand on Neji's chin. He whispered to himself, this is quite the predicament. Naruto turned to Choji and said, so, what did you say you were talking to Sakura about? As Choji was placed on the spot, he felt a sudden heat. Choji stammered, oh, just well. Naruto crossed his arms and waited for a response, but Choji knew there was no way out of it and that he could only tell the truth because he had no real lie to back it up. We were asking her about you. What? As he leapt to his feet, Naruto asked. Just like you gave Hinata Kiba's side, we gave her yours, told Choji. What? Shikamaru's eyes darted from Choji to Naruto. I said I didn't want anyone to, Naruto said. Neji leaned in at that moment and gave them both a back of the head slap. They rubbed their heads and moaned, "Ow." "Enough," Neji said. "It looks like I'll have to step in and solve all these problems." Then, as if on cue, everyone turned around and saw Sakura approaching them, followed by Hinata approaching from the opposite direction. After glancing at them, everyone turned to face Neji. Neji first cracked his knuckles, then his neck. "All right," he said, "it's time for the show." Neji then left the group to go tell Sakura and Hinata the harsh reality. Tenten said, "Go get him, baby." Neji then stepped out into the street and, as he looked to his left, he noticed Hinata approaching Sakura, who was standing to his right. The two girls continued to walk, giving Neji a suspicious look, until they were standing directly beside her. They attempted to say, "Morning," but Neji interrupted them right away. He said, "Both of you, come with me." His tone was so severe and direct that it made everyone shudder. Then Neji turned and started to leave, Sakura and Hinata trailing behind. Tenten said to Choji, Shikamaru, and Naruto, "I've got to see what happens." The three boys exchanged glances and followed her. The indolent Nara stopped dead in his tracks when a female voice called out, "Shikamaru." He turned to see Ino running at him, but she stopped in front of him and whimpered, "You left me alone again this morning." Shikamaru replied, Well, sorry about that, but I was desperately needed." "Who could be more in need of you than me?" Ino answered. Tenten was called, "Hey Shikamaru, would you be arriving?" Shikamaru gave Ino another anxious glare. "What is she discussing?" A little irritated now, Ino asked. Shikamaru leaned in to kiss her and then took her hand. He pulled her along as he said, "Let's just go." Neji led the girls to a more remote location, the training grounds, where no one was present at this hour of the morning. When Neji stopped, he turned to see Hinata and Sakura had followed. As he rolled up his sleeves, he said, "Both of you, sit down." Sakura hesitated, but Hinata followed instructions. Sakura said, "Can I ask what all this is, Ab?" Sakura complied with Neji's more abrasive command, "Sit down." Ino, Shikamaru, Naruto, and Choji gathered in the bushes close to Tenten to observe the action. "Now," began Neji, "you are both here because of the negative state you put others in." Negative condition? Hinata inquired. Sakura said, "I'll let you know that I'm." "Stop talking. Nobody's talking while I'm talking," Neji screamed, making the two girls jump. "Now," he went on, "you have put Kiba in a bad state of mind, he's currently angry and missing." He pointed to Hinata. "And you have put Naruto in a bad state of mind, causing him to doubt himself." Neji turned to Sakura. "You appear to be confused," Neji said. "Both of you are hopeful about something you want to happen and will work very hard to achieve." He then turned to Hinata and said, "But the truth is that it will never happen, and by being that way you cause others to be unhappy. You want Naruto to love you, but he doesn't love you like that, nor will he ever. So why don't you give Kiba a chance to find someone who would truly love and care for you?" Hinata started sniffling a bit. To Hinata, Sakura replied, "Yeah, you should." As he turned to face her, Neji said, "You are no different. You're blinded by your own self. Righteousness, you don't see it. Sasuke and you have different life paths, so even though you want him to love you, it will never happen. You should put it out of your mind and try to be more realistic, because he will never be the Prince Charming you desire." Sakura then bit her lip and bowed her head, and Neji glanced from Sakura to Hinata, who both appeared to be equally saddened by Neji's words. "I'm sorry, but someone had to tell you," he said. Then he turned and started to leave. From the bushes, Ino said, "Well, that was interesting." At that moment, everyone's attention was drawn to the sound of a bell ringing, which it continued to do quickly. Shikamaru said, "The village's alarm system." He then bounded off toward the main gate, followed by Sakura and Hinata, who even got up and ran in the direction of the sound. At the gates of the village, Orochimaru led the army of sound ninja who were attacking, and half of them broke through the walls while the others attempted to break through the gate with a battering ram. The leaf ninja on the scene attempted to defend themselves, but they were outnumbered by the sound ninja and were quickly overpowered. Then Naruto and the others showed up, and they immediately got involved in the action. A sound ninja was kicked into a wall by Naruto after he ran up and punched him in the face. Choji transformed into the human boulder and started striking them in big clusters. Tenten shot several knives at a group of sound ninja and produced a scroll. Neji launched 3 sound ninja away with an air palm blast, and they heard a voice exclaim, "I'm home." And that immediately attracted their attention, so they all looked for the cause. Sasuke and 3 other people were standing on the village wall. A big man with orange hair that was spiked, another man with white hair, a large sword, and a girl with red hair and glasses. With a fierce expression of determination and hatred on their faces, Naruto, Choji, Shikamaru, and Neji turned to face them immediately. Shikamaru turned back to Hinata, Sakura, and Ino and said, "Everyone, get back." "Is it them?" the man with the white hair asked. Sasuke was informed. "Yay Suigetsu. That's them." The bigger man, Jugo, said, "They don't look so tough." With a peculiar expression on his face, Sasuke said, "Strange." He then examined the group further and tallied them, saying, "You're missing a member. Last time I remember Neji was the one who was down and out, but now it seems you've lost Kiba." Neji was about to charge Sasuke in the hopes of exacting revenge when Naruto intervened. He replied, "No, he's mine." Neji replied, "All right then." Choji said, "Then we'll each get one of his partners." "If only Kiba was here," said Shikamaru. "He would have loved to fight that big guy." The four of them got ready to charge, and after Neji said, "There's nothing we can do about him now. It's down to us, it's now or never." Everyone turned back to Sakura when she called out, "Wait. Naruto, are you going to fight Sasuke?" "I told you what I was going to do," he replied. Naruto grinned as she said, "Then go," she said, "and give him what for." He replied, "I will." The four then turned around, and Naruto said to them, "I'm glad we did all this, no matter what happens." Shikamaru and Neji grinned in agreement as Choji said, "As am I." When Shikamaru said, "Let's do this," then Sasuke's group leapt down from the village wall at the four, and the four of them ran forward and charged Sasuke. The Retrieval squad was then charged by Sasuke's group as they hit the ground. The eight then leapt to their feet and began fighting. Thus began the battle that would determine everything, the showdown between Naruto's group and Sasuke's group. The pairings were Sasuke vs Naruto, Karen vs Shikamaru, Suigetsu vs Neji, and Jirobo vs Choji. The two fighters immediately faced off and went to war. Neji jumped up and swung his leg at Suigetsu's head, but Suigetsu tucked his head and swung his arms again. Neji hit the ground and leaned back, barely avoiding the sword as it swung inches from his face, slicing strands of his hair. Suigetsu then ran up and swung his sword at Neji, but Neji dodged again, and he quickly recovered and leapt back. The two Leviathans, Choji and Jirobo, ran forward and locked hands, grunting and groaning as they attempted to push each other back, but neither was able to move their opponent all the way. Choji shot back to his feet as Jirobo charged him again, but not before he swung his arms around him, lifted him up, and threw him against a wall. After running up and punching Choji in the face twice, Jirobo staggered back a few steps after Choji kicked him in the stomach. After that, Choji used the expansion jutsu to make his arms bigger. Then, after running up and repeatedly punching Jirobo in the face, Choji flew back and slid through the dirt after Jirobo had punched Choji in the face several times. He then raised his head and gazed at Jirobo in a daze, noticing something strange. Jirobo had big spikes all over his arm, half of his body was gray, and his eye was yellow. Subsequently, Jirobo emitted a terrifying chuckle and lunged towards Choji, who swiftly stood up and readied himself for another assault. Sasuke and Naruto stood apart from the commotion of the fights, getting ready for their own duel. As Naruto swung daggers at him, Sasuke remarked, "Well, here we are." He grinned savagely and said, "Just like old times." Sasuke clutched his sword as Naruto said, "This was the showdown that was always meant to be." He then slowly reached into his pocket and produced a knife. "This is our fate," Naruto declared. "This is our fight." Naruto followed suit as Sasuke brandished his sword and charged his former teammate. Sasuke then ran up and swung his sword, but Naruto blocked him. Naruto then swung his knife, but Sasuke blocked it. Finally, Sasuke parried with his sword, and Naruto ducked and leapt out of the way. Naruto staggered back a few steps, but then Sasuke leapt to his feet and kicked him in the face. Sasuke then swung his arm forward and launched his Chidori blast at Naruto. As the blast blasted past him and struck the building behind him, setting it on fire, Naruto hurried to get out of the way. Karen and Shikamaru, meanwhile, eyed one another. "Why must I fight a girl every time?" As he stood there scratching his head, Shikamaru said, "How troublesome." However, when Karen looked at him, she felt no need to hurt him like her teammates would. On the contrary, she felt the opposite. "How well?" Shikamaru said, "It can't be helped." Then he charged her. Karen ducked as he ran up and swung his arm, then Shikamaru swung once more before she sidestepped him and Shikamaru turned back to her. At that moment, Karen leaned in to give Shikamaru a kiss. Suigetsu swung his sword at Neji, who dodged it quickly, then jumped up and gave him a roundhouse kick to the face, causing him to stumble back. Then, Suigetsu lunged forward and gave Neji a head. And Neji jumped out of the way, but only just. The sword managed to cut his left shoulder, causing him to step back bleeding. Suigetsu then swung his sword down, spinning his body and performing the 8 trigrams rotation. As the sword came down, the rotation gradually stopped it, and he stood suspended in the air before being flung aside by the gust of wind and flew off and into a building. In the meantime, Shikamaru and Karen were together. She raised her mouth away from him, and he gave her a very perplexed look while she gave him a very interested look in return. A fist suddenly flew out of nowhere and punched Karen in the face, and Shikamaru turned to see Ino there as she leaned in to kiss him once more. Startled, he said, Ino. You have no right to touch my man, screamed Ino to the downed Karen. But Karen wasn't a fighter. She lay on the ground out cold from Ino's hit. And you? She turned to Shikamaru and said, what do you? They turned to see the village gate door fly open and an entire army of sound ninjas swarming the village after hearing a loud bang behind them. Orochimaru, however, was riding high on a giant purple snake when more Leaf Village ninja arrived and engaged the sound ninja. He watched from above and witnessed the battle and mayhem, spotting Sasuke battling Naruto, Neji and Suigetsu, and Jirobo versus Choji among the ninja groups. His eyes then shifted to Shikamaru, who was standing over Karen. Shikamaru's eyes opened wide in surprise as Orochimaru turned his snake in that direction. He yelled to Ino, get back. Orochimaru's snake then sprang and attempted to bite Shikamaru. After leaping out of the way and swiftly grabbing Ino, Shikamaru looked over his shoulder to see the snake was pursuing him once more. Jirobo, meanwhile, punched Choji in the face and then again. Choji then punched Jirobo in the stomach, but Jirobo butted him. Jirobo then swung his arm back and gave Choji a powerful punch that sent him flying back, but Choji stopped himself by reaching down and grabbing the dirt. He then looked up at Jirobo. Choji then used the expansion jutsu and transformed into the human boulder. He then charged up and rolled in Hirobo's direction, and when he was close enough, Jirobo swung his arm forward and punched Choji. However, Choji's speed was too high, and the two blows collided, sending them flying back. Choji then simply repeated the same action, but this time he used the spiky human boulder. Jirobo attempted to punch Choji again, but this time, however, Choji charged forward and struck him, tearing his arm off entirely. After Jirobo fell to his knees and screamed in agony, Choji approached him from behind. Hirobo's arm was gushing blood all the time, and Choji saw him lay down and start applying pressure to his wound. In the meantime, Naruto created 2 clones and had them attack Sasuke. One of the clones ran up and attempted to punch Sasuke, but Sasuke dodged and slashed the clone with his sword. When the second clone attempted to attack, Sasuke blocked it and then punched the clone in the face. However, it was too late for Sasuke to take action, so Naruto ran up and struck him in the chest with his Rasengan as he turned back to face him. Sasuke then flew back and into a building while Naruto stood back. Sasuke then slowly stood up, his eyes closed and his face bleeding and bruised. After saying, no more playing around, he opened his eyes and showed off his Sharingan. Neji and Suigetsu, meanwhile, ran up and swung their swords, but Neji dodged. Then, Neji reached into his pouch and pulled out 2 knives, and Neji swung one at Suigetsu's face, but Suigetsu blocked it. Then, Neji struck the ground where his opponent had been lying, and he ducked back, but the sword cut him across his chest. Neji slowly stood up again, but he was barely able to do so before Neji pushed forward, knocked his opponent off balance, stumbled back, and then Neji threw the knives forward. Suigetsu dodged both of them, but Neji appeared before him. Neji then started using his 8 trigrams and 128 palms to hammer down on Suigetsu, repeatedly striking him until he was done. When he was done, he stood over his opponent, and Suigetsu looked blankly before falling to the ground. Neji then turned his head and saw Shikamaru fleeing from the enormous snake. With Ino in his arms, Shikamaru leapt to the left and right, avoiding the snake as it approached and attempted to bite him. However, Shikamaru continued to jump without realizing the dead he was getting close to, and as he looked, he stopped in front of a wall, and when he turned around, he saw the snake standing over him. Before the snake could attack, 2 figures materialized, and one of them kicked Orochimaru in the face, knocking him off the snake. Orochimaru fell to the ground below, and the figure appeared in front of Shikamaru and Ino. Ino grabbed him tightly and buried her face in his chest. Then it was obvious to them that it was a dog and a man. Akamaru, Kiba, you've returned, Shikamaru exclaimed upon seeing them. Did you anticipate that I would miss this party? The snake looked down at them and roared, get Ino to safety. Kiba said, I'll deal with this. Akamaru barked in response to Kiba's question. Shikamaru then turned and ran away, but he and Ino glanced back at Kiba as they did so. "Do you think he'll be okay?" Ino inquired. Shikamaru replied, "Of course. He's still angry, though. Furthermore, a Kiba who is furious is dangerous." The snake lunged down at Kiba and Akamaru, who were standing in front of it at the time. Akamaru transformed into a clone of Kiba as they leapt into the air, and the two of them performed the fang over fang before flying forward and blowing a hole through the snake. As the snake's bloody body hit the ground, the two triumphantly stood on the other side. Kiba said, "Too easy." Akamaru barked and reverted to his dog persona. At that moment, Kiba looked up to see Orochimaru standing there as snakes swung up from the ground and encircled the two, tying them down. At that moment, Kiba ripped out of the snakes, flexed his body, and charged Orochimaru. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and got ready to attack Naruto in the meantime of Sasuke versus Naruto. At that moment, Sasuke vanished from his position and emerged behind Naruto. He then elbowed him in the back, then moved in front of him and punched him in the stomach and then again in the chin. Sasuke then ran up and kicked Naruto in the head before slashing him across the back from behind and sending blood flying as Naruto hit the ground. After that, Sasuke circled to Naruto's front side. He turned and started to leave after saying, "And that's that." However, something grabbed his leg, and when he turned around, he saw Naruto looking up at him and his hand around his leg. "Where are you heading?" "We're not done here," Naruto said. Suddenly, he started to glow red, and then a lot of energy suddenly exploded out of him, sending Sasuke flying back. Then, with a burst of red energy, Naruto stood up and started to shape the Rasengan in his hand. Sasuke hurriedly stood up and got his Chidori ready. Orochimaru was charged by Kiba, who ran up and punched him repeatedly in the face before grabbing him by the shirt and pulling him closer. Kiba then reached up and kneed Orochimaru in the stomach, causing him to stagger back, and then he ran up and slammed his shoulder into Orochimaru's stomach, tackling him against a wall. Following the attack, Kiba got up while Orochimaru lay there still, then he turned to face Akamaru, whose hound had escaped the snakes that had bound him. As Kiba turned to face him again, Orochimaru suddenly came to life and stabbed him in the stomach with a sword. For a moment, Kiba stood dumbfounded, staring down at the sword that had pierced his body. Blood then started to pour from Kiba's mouth, but he then reached out and put his hands on Orochimaru's throat, squeezing as hard as he could. Orochimaru tried to press the sword further, but he was losing air too quickly, and then his hands fell from the sword and fell to his side because his face was already paler than it was. Subsequently, Kiba dropped him to the ground, and he stumbled back, grabbing the sword in his stomach before Kiba swiftly withdrew it. His vision blurred, his breathing became labored, and he fell onto his back, dropping the sword to the ground as he followed. Just like the previous time, Naruto charged up his Rasengan and Sasuke charged up his Chidori. The two then looked at each other with their attacks ready. Before there was a slight explosion and smoke and dust filled the air, the two leapt forward and swung their attack at each other, and the combined energy from the two attacks was so great that it released a blinding light and everyone in the vicinity covered their eyes. When it had settled, it revealed Naruto and Sasuke, both covered in dust, lying down beside one another. Sasuke slowly gripped his sword as Naruto withdrew a knife, and the two slowly sat up and started to stir, then simply stared at one another in silence. "So this is how it concludes?" Sasuke asked, and Naruto nodded in response. Then, without warning, Naruto sprang forward and stabbed Sasuke in the stomach. After the knife pierced his body, Sasuke gave a last gasp, his eyes slowly closed, Naruto sat back, and he began to bleed from his stomach before his body collapsed back onto the ground. Naruto got to his feet slowly. Any remaining ninja were now fleeing, and the sight of Sasuke and Orochimaru put an end to their hopes of victory, so they left. Naruto then turned to look around. Someone called out to him, "Naruto, Naruto, come quick." He turned to see Choji sprinting in his direction. "What is it?" Choji inquired. "It's Kiba," Choji said. "He's hurt." Naruto's eyes widened, and he dashed forward, followed by Choji, who ran alongside him and carried him to Kiba. Shikamaru, Neji, Tenten, and Ino were already there, and Ino was using medical jutsu on Kiba, who was lying on the ground, motionless, with a hole in his stomach from where he had been stabbed. Choji and Naruto rushed up to witness the scene. "No," Naruto said, running up and kneeling next to Kiba. "It's me, Kiba," he said. Everyone watched him with a great deal of concern as he remained motionless. "You must get up. You are a fighter, don't give up now." At that moment, Sakura and Hinata entered the scene. My god! When Sakura realized what was happening, she screamed, knelt next to Ino, and assisted in Kiba's healing. Hinata covered her mouth in disbelief. Then, with no discernible success, the two medical ninjas continued their attempts to heal him. Next, Choji, Shikamaru, and Neji knelt next to their fallen comrade's body. Shikamaru said, "Kiba, we're all here rotting for you." Kiba remained motionless until Choji approached. "Kiba. It's Choji," he said. "You were quite upset when I last saw you. That throw is forgiven." With a half-hearted smile, he said, "But now you have to get up, and then we can go get some food." Then Neji took charge, saying, "With all your strength and savagery, a little thing like this won't finish you off after everything we've done." At that moment, Ino and Sakura leaned back, looking up at everyone with teary eyes, Kiba still motionless despite the fact that the wound on his stomach had healed. Naruto exclaimed, "No!" Choji and Shikamaru got to their feet, and Shikamaru turned to cry on Choji's shoulder. Neji took a knife out of his pocket and put it in Kiba's hand. Tenten approached and consoled him after he said, half-heartedly, "He was the bravest of us. You may need this across the way." He then got to his feet, tears streaming down his face. Choji said, "Goodbye, old friend." Akamaru rose and took a seat next to his master. Then Hinata moved through the crowd and toward her teammate's fallen body. She then stood up and knelt next to him. "Hey Kiba," she said, sniffling, "I know you were really upset the last time I heard from you. I also heard what you think of me, and," she said, now crying, "if you get up, I'd be willing to give us a try." She then leaned down and kissed Kiba, and when she was finished, she leaned back, and Kiba was still motionless. The cool air blew, and everyone stood for a moment in silence. Then, all of a sudden, Kiba's chest rose and air filled his lungs, and he slowly started to stir, opened his eyes, and sit up. With tears in their eyes, everyone wiped them away and rejoiced that their friend was still alive. After that, Kiba got up and leaned down to kiss her before Hinata rushed up and gave him a hug. Kiba looked down at her and raised her head to him. Naruto glanced at Sakura after noticing that everyone else was grinning. He thought, "Oh, what the hell?" Then, smiling, he approached Sakura and planted a kiss on her lips. She was initially taken aback because she had not anticipated it, but she eventually calmed down and came to terms with it. After completing their ultimate goal of eliminating the person who had caused them so much suffering, the Sasuke Retrieval Squad will now embark on a new mission: parenthood. They all went on to lead happy lives.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.